Welcome everyone to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Issues and Updates on August 16, 2023. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. This is the last issues you have before a 2-week recess, well-deserved, and you have a lot of business to conduct. We are going to start now. We'll go probably till around noon. Then you'll reconvene at 1:30 and you'll finish the list. We'll stay here until it's done. So my goal for you this morning is to get through the consent agenda request list, and then we'll start the list in the order that is presented for the other topics. So staff in the room, I'm sorry, it may not be till the afternoon that you present, but we'll go as efficiently as we can. So with that, we'll start. If Chair, would you please convene as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County.
Great. This is requests for consent agenda for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Joining you online is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra. Ann, are you there?
I'm here.
Good morning, Ann. Thank you. Item 1, approval of a personal services contract with Impact Northwest for resident services staffing to provide peer support to families living in public housing. Contract value is $358,497.60 for 1 year. Funding is through the Supportive Housing Services measure. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Tony Carter, Housing Authority Director. Please
Good morning, Commissioners. Clackamas County's public housing portfolio consists of 545 scattered units. Clients are selected from a wait list, which includes many families who are homeless and or have barriers to housing. This contract with Impact Northwest will allow the continuation of funding for existing resident services staff that support families living in public housing properties in Clackamas County.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Leenstra, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will recess as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County and convene as a Water Environment Services Board.
This is request for consent agenda for Water Environment Services. Item 1, approval of fiscal year 2022-2023 report in lieu of audit form for Clackamas County Service District Number 1. Filing fee is $20. Funding is through WES Sanitary Sewer and Surface Water Operating Funds. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. So I've actually got 3 items today and 3 staff reports. I'm happy to do them all at once if you'd like. They're all identical. So before the formation of the WES 190 partnership back in 2016, 2017, we had 3 separate entities that required audits on an annual basis. With the formation of the 190 now, we only have 1 audit, but those entities still exist even though they don't have any financial transactions. So we do this report in lieu to the Secretary of State, $20 and all zeros, so they're all the same. And with that, I respectfully request that the board authorize the chair to execute the report in lieu of audit.
Questions or comments from? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you.
And Greg alluded to it, so item 2 is the same thing, report in lieu of audit for the Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County. Item 3, report in lieu of audit for the Tri-City Service District, all 3 under the umbrella of WES.
Any questions or comments on items 2 and 3? No. Seeing no objections, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as a Water Environment Services and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
These are requests for consent agenda for the Board of County Commissioners. First item, first department, first area elected officials, starting with the Sheriff's Office. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon State Marine Board for enforcement related to recreational boating in Oregon. Agreement value is $885,070 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon State Marine Board. No county general funds for the match are involved. Nancy Artman, Finance Manager for the Sheriff's Office. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. As mentioned, this is for Marine Patrol Services. This is an IGA from the Oregon State Marine Board. It pays the substantial cost of personnel. We aren't anticipating an increase for next year as registration fees are down. Pardon me. But we have budgeted, and it is in our adopted budget.
Nancy, which registration fees are down?
Motorboat registration fees.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. And how much are they? I'm
Over,
sorry to put you on the spot for
yeah,
that.
overall, I'm not sure, Chair, but I can look into getting that number for you. I just know the amount that we receive as our allocation.
I noticed this is submitted by Jenna Morrison, Undersheriff. Gary,
Yes, usually the undersheriff will sign on behalf of the sheriff.
is she still our undersheriff?
As far as I know, yes.
I thought she retired.
Can you clarify, Nancy? I'm not sure of Jenna's status.
HR could probably speak to it better. She is employed as an undersheriff. She did retire, and she has returned.
So when you retire and you come back, is your title still undersheriff? HR?
Yes, and if someone in the room can speak to that, if someone from HR is here, I'd be happy to defer to them. But in this case, yes, and it's the same, which is different from our rehire program. They still come back as deputy sheriffs. But this would be something definitely to take up with HR. It's way out of my purview.
Thank you, Nancy. I understand that. So I'm confused on the documents, how it's signed. It's signed as undersheriff, but I understand she retired. So I think we need a point of clarification on that, especially of documents coming forward. Gary, would you handle that offline?
I'll take care of this offline, and I'll report back to the board, yes.
Thank you very much. Are there any other qualifying questions or comments?
Yes, Chair. A question I have, did I hear you correctly, Nancy? Is it that it's a mathematical formula share?
Correct. There is an allotment amount that we receive from the Marine Board. In this instance, for the biennium, we're expecting to receive, I've got it right here, just a moment. Get to my right agreement. We're expecting to receive $885,000, but as a point of clarification, Commissioner, we do contribute general fund dollars as well because that is the entire program cost. While it's not required as a match from the Marine Board in order to cover the materials that we need, maintenance on the boats, fuel, et cetera, we contribute as well. So the OSMB award amount is $885,000 for the biennium. The county's contribution is $598,000 for the biennium. That is budgeted and has been approved in our adopted budget, so it's a total of $1.4 million.
Okay, so has that, the $998,000, is that our actual cost? Is that a recent financial analysis, or is that a pre-existing financial analysis that came up with that?
The 598 is based on actual cost today, and since we're not anticipating any increase in the amount that we receive from OSMB, that figure is a flat figure. When we come forward this next cycle for budget, we will definitely speak to the costs of the program as a whole, and that's something that this body, along with the Budget Committee, will need to determine the cost and the value, because we'll come to you and say it's X amount of dollars, which I anticipate is going to be more next year, because we all know costs go up annually, but we will bring that forward and be transparent about what the actual cost will be.
Yeah, I'd love to see any kind of math that you've done to cost that out, because I think it would be valuable for us that if we need to lobby the state to change the fees, it's stepped aside the state, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to lobby the fee for more resources if, otherwise we can't be subsidizing that, in my opinion. It sounds like we are.
We've always paid a portion with general funds, so we've never received the entire amount from the Marine Board to cover the cost. So it's just been the formula we've used for years. But to your point, if we are receiving a flat number and the cost is X, more will have to be put in by general fund.
Okay, thank you.
And
You're
to your
welcome.
point, Commissioner Savas, some counties have more waterways than others, and people from other counties and states come to our county to recreate, and yet, once again, we're bearing the brunt of the service with that. I think it's a very good point. Commissioner West.
Thank you for coming today. Are you aware of any opportunity where counties layer their own additional fees so they don't pay out of their own general fund for these type of, like, we have a lot of waterways. The list is quite extensive in this packet. Are you aware maybe of how other law enforcement agencies don't have to rely on general fund to help fund that?
A great question. Unfortunately, our sergeant, who's over Marine, is on vacation, and our lieutenant is broken at the moment. He has an injury. So I will ask them, because they certainly will have that information, and I'd be happy to get back to you. I don't know off the top of my head.
It'd be great to find a way to relieve the general fund, if possible. Thank you.
Understood.
Any other questions? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Item 2, approval of a board order authorizing issuance of a purchase order with 911 Supply, Inc. for police clothing and gear purchases through a cooperative contract. Purchase order value not to exceed $200,000 for 1 year. Funding through the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Funding, Public Safety Local Option Levy Funding, Contract Cities, and $145,000 in budgeted county general funds.
Thank you. I'd like to point out for this contract, all costs associated with uniform for a recruit or an existing deputy are actually based on cost to the program. So for instance, if I work in the Enhanced Law Enforcement District and I'm receiving new uniforms, that cost will be borne by the ELAD. Same as levy, same as the city contracts and any others. So that is how that cost is allocated out. We have an estimate of $145,000 in general fund dollars. It'll be based upon actual cost for those who are paid from the general fund. This does cover only uniforms. I want to point that out. There will be a separate contract for vests to the amount of approximately $50,000. We have applied for a grant, if received, that will reimburse us for 50% of that cost. So we're hopeful to receive some of those dollars. This is a 1-year versus a 5-year contract, as we are on the City of Salem's cooperative agreement, so that we could have
Oh, I see.
an easier procurement process. They've done the work and have met the legal requirements. So once that contract is renegotiated, we will come back before you with a longer-term contract.
And this has been budgeted for?
Correct.
Yes. Questions or comments?
Chair, not on this, but I just wanted to make one other point on the last item. I was doing some math before, Commissioner West was speaking on. So I just took the 13,520 hours stated down in the packet and divided that into the 885,000. That's $65 an hour. And we know
No way.
we can't do it for that.
Correct.
We know that the true cost of any employee or the average employee is not, that doesn't even cover the equipment, fuel, the boathouse, all the things that go along with the marine unit.
No, correct. That is the portion that the general fund pays for.
So that contribution of the general fund, I'd like to know what that number really is.
Certainly.
Yeah. It's got to be higher. It's got to be higher than $100,000.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on item number 2? Seeing no objections.
Thank you, Nancy. The next 2 items are for the District Attorney's Office. Item 3, approval to apply for a Victims of Crime Act and Criminal Fine Act grant from the Oregon Department of Justice, and a board order delegating authority to the district attorney to sign the application. Grant value is $1,467,326 for 2 years. Funding is through federal and state funds. No county general funds are involved. Carrie Walker from the District Attorney's Office. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, this is our every 2-year grant that we apply for that pays for the majority of our positions that provide direct victim services through the District Attorney's Office. There is a general fund cost for supporting those positions of $801,624. That's budgeted into our current budget and will be budgeted in the future as well. And then the board order request is the Department of Justice is asking for the board to allow the DA to have signing authority for grant documents after the initial acceptance of the grant.
Questions or comments? You're okay with this?
Yes, I'm sorry. So we're working out a little kink here, a flaw in our internal system, because I say no county general funds on the last 3, but that's false. There are general funds involved, which Carrie just mentioned and Nancy mentioned before. So we're going to clarify this moving forward after your recess, so it'll be crystal clear when these come forward in the future.
And the signing authority you're okay with, too?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, that would clarify some confusion. So when you do that, Gary, let's just say on item 1, for example, if it's not a general, how would that be actually calculated? Maybe that's the answer for, let's postpone that.
We'll be working on
response.
that, so we want to be crystal clear with you and the public on how much of property taxes general fund is used for any of these grants or contracts. Yes.
That's fair, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Seeing no objections on this
All
one.
right, thank you. Item 4, approval of a cooperative grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Justice for Child Support Services. The grant value is $8 million for 4 years. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Justice. I think no county general funds are involved. You're about to hear Matt Semmetrick?
Semritz.
Sorry,
Yes,
Matt.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. Before you is this request for approval of this cooperative agreement. This is an agreement that's renewed every 4 years with the Department of Justice. This is an agreement that we're required by state statute to enter into. It provides the vast majority of our funding. Last year was 85%. As you heard, there are general funds, obviously, in the implementation of our program, $441,000. But as I mentioned, this provides the vast majority of funding for our program. Allows our folks to do the great work that they do. Last year, we collected just over $20 million in child support for folks in our county.
You collected $20 million. How much does it cost you to run the program?
So typically, the total program, we generally collect, for every $12 we collect, we spend about $1 to collect those 12. And our program notoriously has been one of the best performing programs in the state.
No, I don't doubt that. We don't doubt your success at all. Please understand the questions. Is that $1, does it come from general fund?
The $1 would come from the general fund,
Okay.
yeah. So typically, as part of this contract, 2/3 of our expenses are reimbursed by the federal government. Allowable expenses, those are generally all of our expenses. On top of that, we get incentive funding for performance measures, which we've done very well on historically. And so that comprises the dollar value that you see before you, but we get automatically that 2/3 reimbursement plus incentive funding that's several $100,000 each year.
Just because there's a statement, no general funds are involved, obviously $1 per $12 of general fund is involved, so we're just a point of clarification. No, we do love the program. We do appreciate this very much. You've done just fantastic work on it. Any other questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you. We will correct this for tomorrow's business meeting, and then in the future, it will be corrected and very clear going forward. Thank you, Commissioners. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreements with the cities of Gladstone, Lake Oswego, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Westland, and Wilsonville for the traffic signal controller upgrades and signal optimization project. Total project value is $820,103. Funding through federal, county road, and local jurisdiction funds. No county general funds are involved, I hope?
Zero.
All right. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Chair Smith, Commissioners, as you can see in the materials, we have and operate about 175 traffic signals. And those signals are operated in unincorporated Clackamas County. And we also provide signalization services for some of our cities. Obviously, the efficiencies of these signal timing and consistency with the flow of traffic doesn't stop at a city boundary. So we want to make sure that we provide a benefit to the entirety of our citizens of Clackamas County by making sure those signals are all linked and efficient and effective. We've got about 120 of these lovely signals, actually the signal controllers that are outdated. And so basically what this is doing is essentially advancing an IGA that would help us replace those signals and be able to collect monies back from these cities that we're providing services for to offset their costs for their signals in their jurisdictions. That's it.
That's it. Questions or comments from anyone?
Yeah, just a question, Dan. So these stoplights, or is this really when we're getting on and off the thruway with, at certain traffic times?
They are
That's what you're talking
the signalized intersections, and we actually do a lot of linking and to build efficiencies in the flow of traffic through those signalized intersections.
Okay.
Yep, so
All
we
right,
tie them together.
Thanks.
So one quick question. What do you charge per hour to those jurisdictions for that work?
Hi, Ty, I'll get back to you off the top of your head. Yeah.
Please do. Thank
I'm
you.
assuming, I would assume it's actual cost, but I'll confirm that and get back to you.
Okay.
Any objections or questions? Seeing no objections, excuse me. Go ahead.
Item 2, approval of a quitclaim deed for 7 properties sold at the June 2023 surplus property auction. Total value is $1,324,000. Funding is through the purchasers. No county general funds are involved.
Surplus property had an auction. You're aware of this because you previously deemed these properties at that auction to be surplus. That auction was very successful, resulted in the sale of about 12 of those properties. We had about 18, I think, on there. We'll put those that weren't sold back on the next auction. Essentially, the revenue from those sales totaled about $1.3 million. And essentially, with the approval of these quitclaim deeds, it formalizes the transaction as sale of those properties to those bidders that bid and were successful in their bidding for these properties. I should note the fact that we are working closely with county council because there's been a recent Supreme Court case that has kind of required us to provide additional notification to past owners. So we have set aside accounts in case some past owner comes forward and wants to claim the revenues or the gains off the sales of those properties, but we've been coordinating closely with council on that. But essentially attached to your materials are it's the auction packet, all the information about the properties, and the quitclaim deed to finalize the sale.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, the $1.3 million goes to the general fund?
It goes to the overlapping tax. So that's a really good question. So right now of the 1.3, when you take out all the costs, it's, to operate, maintain, and to put on the auction on with the CCSO's help, it's about $737,000. That's the remainder. And then when you take that money, we've got to actually stockpile that money set aside because of the Supreme Court case that came forward. But once all that gets cleared, that goes all back to the overlapping taxing districts. So it gets distributed back to the districts by the rates that they collect.
Okay, good, thank you.
So
Yeah,
the short answer is yes, you'll
Yeah.
get something back. Yep.
good, okay, thank you.
More questions? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of an engineering and related services contract with Harper Huff Peterson Regalis for the Courtney Avenue Complete Street, River Road, Oregon 99E project. Total contract value is $1,261,338.71. Funding is through a regional flexible funds allocation, county road fund, and system development charges. No county general funds are involved.
We basically, Clackamas County obtained that regional flex fund allocation grant from Metro to construct the Courtney Avenue projects. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the section of Courtney. It was a very popular project, was a tier 1 project. There's basically little to no pet improvements along that corridor. This will provide that. It's near a school. It ranked really high on a safe routes to school analysis, et cetera. And so essentially we are requesting, well, a little more information. Total project costs about $5.6 million. The project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on December 6th. Proposals were opened publicly January 17th. After review of those proposals, basically Harper Hoff, Peterson, and Regalis were basically the highest responsive bidder. So, and this is for, and this is for like engineering and support project management services for this capital project.
Questions or comments?
Just a comment, I sure hope that the Jennings Lodge project, which is far more senior than this one is, actually breaks ground before this one breaks ground.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. We were working actively on that project to get those costs in contained. Yep.
No objections, thank you.
Chair Smith.
I didn't see your light, it was last minute. Sorry about that.
Mr. Johnson, the regional flexible funds allocation, is that part of the disbursement from the regional transportation plan funding? Is that where that comes from?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, good, okay.
I'll confirm that for you, though, and get back to you. Just to make sure.
If that's the case, I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
I'm not sure it's the recent one.
It's a current
It's a
one.
current one.
Current one.
The current
Yes.
one, that's what I expect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of a grant contract with Metro to prepare a travel options action plan. Total value is $239,608, which includes local staff in-kind match of $24,608. Match funding is through the road fund. No county general funds are involved.
This project, there were questions about this project, but this project was a part of the discussion we had with the Board of County Commissioners around a long-range work program that the board approved on August 9th. Essentially, this is looking to secure funds to offset road funds that would be paying for this project and secure this grant through Metro for the identified amount of $239,608, or $239,608, no cents.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of a board order approving declaration of surplus property. Total value is $95,459 based on minimum bid amounts at a future auction. Funding is through future auction proceeds. No county general funds are involved.
We just had a discussion on the sale of those properties previously through our public auction process. Essentially, through this action, the board would be declaring these properties, which were received through tax foreclosure, as surplus, which would then allow our staff to go forward and put them on public option for purchase and to get those back on the tax rolls.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, next, Technology Services. Item 1, approval of a public improvement contract with Roth Communication for the placement of underground conduit and vaults on Moonbeam Drive as part of the Colorado Road ARPA project. Total value is $204,225. Funding is through the Clackamas County American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funding for broadband expansion. No county general funds are involved. Let's see. Keelan Cleary, the Deputy Director of Technology Services, and Duke Drexter, our Clackamas Broadband Exchange Manager. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. As Commissioner Schmidt said, we're here to bring the first of 3 contracts before you. The first one is with Roth Communications to put underground conduit and vaults on Moonbeam Drive. This project will allow broadband, about 30 homes along that road to have high-speed broadband. This is all entirely paid for by ARPA funds, no general funds at all involved.
Thank you. It's good to see our ARPA funds are being rolled out for actual, I mean, you have been working on it, I know, but actually, the feet on the ground, so to speak. So I love the names of these roads. Moonbeam Drive and Colorado Road. Where is that?
It's southwest of City of Sandy.
City of Sandy.
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe you know where that is, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, Chair Smith, if you go to the Fred Meyers and Sandy and go behind it, here
Yeah.
about a mile, you'll come to Colorado Road.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gentlemen, the conduit you're putting in this area is underground conduit. Most of your cable is strung up on poles. Why is that the case here on Colorado Road?
So Colorado Road is actually aerial, but on Moonbeam, all the utilities are underground. So our only choice was to go underground.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no objections. Next.
Item 2, approval of a public improvement contract with FiberTel LLC for the placement of underground conduit and vaults in the government camp area. Total value is $253,539. Funding is through the Clackamas County American Rescue Plan Act funding, ARPA, for broadband expansion. No county general funds are involved.
This contract is very similar to the last one we just discussed with FiberTel in this case. This one will pass 54 home sites to provide broadband access availability to homes around the government camp area.
Questions or comments? Very good. Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval for a service level agreement with Link Oregon for dark fiber services to the Oregon State University Research Facility on Miley Road. Total value is $285,700. Funding is through Link Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
This project is to provide broadband services to Oregon State's North Willamette Research and Extension Center. The funds will be paid for by the Clackamas Broadband Exchange Fund, not general funds, but then it will be entirely reimbursed by Link Oregon.
And no ARPA funds are used for this particular one, just to make that
Correct.
clarification. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment increasing funding from an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the financing of community mental health, addiction, treatment, recovery, and prevention, and problem gambling services. The amendment value is $4,599,093.41 for 6 months. Total agreement value is increased to $20,281,264.35 for 2 years. Funding through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this amendment reinstates the IGA that expired June 30, extends the term through December 31st, 2023, and adds the funds. After discussion with the county council, it was deemed that a 6-month extension is necessary to give the county time to better negotiate with the Oregon Health Authority, protecting the county from push down of liability.
Questions, comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of an amendment increasing funding and duration of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for Choice Model Services. The amendment value is $423,946.50 for 6 months. Total agreement value increased to $1,695,785.99 for 2 years. Funding through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, through this agreement, the team has prioritized the expansion of adult foster homes in Clackamas County 2 adult foster homes have opened so far. With this extension, we anticipate opening 2 more homes in the next quarter.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a personal services contract with Catholic Community Services of Western Washington for stabilization services for children and their families. Contract value is $622,956.50 for 12 months. Funding through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, approval of this contract will provide stabilization services for children and adults up to age 20 with the goal of preserving living arrangements, preventing emergency visits, stabilizing mental health needs, and enhancing life domain functioning.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of a revenue grant agreement with Oregon Community Foundation for building a trauma-informed public health system in Clackamas County. Grant value is $150,000 for 3 years. Funding through the Oregon Community Foundation. No county general funds are involved.
This program focuses on serving and improving the health and well-being of Clackamas County residents by integrating evidence-based trauma-informed practices, policies, and programs within the Public Health Division. The project will include landscape analysis, evidence-based training, trauma-informed policy analysis, data gaps, community pilot programs, and public awareness.
It says grant value is $150,000 for how many years?
3 years.
Okay, that 3 years is not written on our document.
Just years.
It just says years. I was a little.
It says at the top.
Okay.
For 3 years.
Okay, I'm just saying what I'm just reading what the folks see out there. Thank you, just make that
We will
quick
correct that,
addition.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments?
Item 5, approval of a non-federal subrecipient grant with Hawthorne Oregon Foursquare Church doing business as, how do you say that, Theophilus? Theophilus, thank you, Church for Blueprint Grant. Grant value is $74,978 for 2 years. Funding is through budgeted county general funds.
Yes, Theophilus Church expands food distribution, expands community events, and partners with Oregon Food Bank to provide culturally preferred food and supplies in Clackamas County. Currently, Theophilus Church services between 225 and 50 families at each event. This grant enables Theophilus Church to purchase more produce and pantry goods from local vendors and supply a greater number of people on a more frequent basis.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 6, approval of an amendment extending the term and increasing the value of a contract with Impact Northwest for continued housing navigation and placement, supportive housing case management, and shelter and care services. The amendment value is $923,537.92 for 1 year. Total contract value is increased to $1,701,806.16 for 2 years. Funding is through the Supportive Housing Services measure. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, we're requesting a contract renewal here for an additional year for a continuation of services. Approximately 30 households with housing navigation and placement, 75 households with supportive housing case management, and 41 households with shelter plus care services will be provided.
Great. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 7, approval of an amendment increasing the value of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Portland to access and use the Homeless Management Information System. The amendment value is $50,000 for 1 year. Total agreement value increased to $150,000 for 5 years. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, is a software application designed to gather individual-level data pertaining to housing, shelter, and services for individuals experiencing homelessness. We've been in this relationship with Portland Housing Bureau for over 19 years. We would like to continue.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 8, approval of an amendment expanding the scope of work, extending the term, and increasing the value of a personal services contract with the Father's Heart Street Ministry for rural and urban outreach and engagement, housing navigation and placement, and supportive housing case management. The amendment value is $2,836,954 for 1 year. Total contract value is increased to $3,492,169 for 2 years. The amendment is funded through $1,836,954 of supportive housing services measure funds and $1 million of state funding from the governor's state of emergency due to homelessness. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, through this contract, the program will provide outreach, direct mobile engagement, pop-up hygiene events such as laundry events and mobile showers, connecting with resources, and assisting with moving into permanent housing. This amendment, we anticipate providing enhanced outreach services to at least 350 households within the urban growth boundary until they are moved into permanent housing.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
That is the consent agenda list. All of these items will be on tomorrow's business meeting agenda for your final action. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know. Happy to answer
With
for you.
corrections.
With the correction, of course, yes. Thank you, Chair. All right, back to the regular issues list. Next up is Providence Health Plan Administrative Services Contract. Christy Durham, who is the Benefits Manager in Human Resources, will present. If you are okay, this item actually is also requested to go on the consent agenda tomorrow, only if you're okay. If not, we want to have a chance for you to answer any questions, ask your questions, and if so, we'll bring it back to you in September. Go ahead, Christy.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. The first item that I'm going to share with you is really about the Administrative Services Agreement with Providence. Providence is our self-insured health plan, and we've got an amendment. It's the 8th amendment, and this amendment comes forward the last one was in 2015, and it's basically just restating and adding 2 different benefits that are listed in your packet. The other elements of this, there are 5 summary plan descriptions. Those come about every renewal period, and typically these come in around April or May. This year, they were delayed due to waiting for some legislative changes to be finalized and for Providence to finalize all that documentation. We received that at the end of July, and it's here in front of you now for your review and approval.
The recommendation from staff is the Board of County Commissioners approve the 23 agreements with Providence Health Plan for administrative services for Clackamas County's self-funded medical plans, except for the POA. Is that correct?
Correct. These are 2 different packets. We have.
The POA is on the second packet.
So actually, give me just one quick moment. So we have a wraparound for all of the agreements, and when we get down to the summary plan descriptions, you'll see that has all of the different plans within them.
Oh, will you come back for the POA at a later date?
The POA is actually in the second item that I'm going to talk with you about. The timelines are the same, but the packets come together at different times. And so there are, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't have the entire packet here in front of me.
Well, I was just reading, and I assumed that's how that was going to roll out after talking to staff, but that's okay.
So Christy, I think Chair is asking, is the Peace Officers Association members, are they included in this contract with Providence Health Plan for administrative services?
Yes.
Okay. Good enough. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl.
Christy, do I understand correctly that the increase of this Providence Health Plan Services contract is only a nominal increase over the previous year? Could you explain?
Correct. So every year, it just depends on the claims. There are a number of factors that are outlined that comprise the total cost, the administrative services fees. And some of that is based on claim utilization. It's a per member per month factor, and so it depends on the number of employees in those plans as well. So just a number of factors. And for whatever set of circumstances, we're actually in a really good position. Again, we've got a lot of stability, and the BRC has worked hard to create plan designs that allow for stability year over year, rather than having, additional volatility. There's always going to be some volatility, but that's been a lot of the work that the BRC has been focused on.
And would you say that the overall health of Clackamas County employees is a positive effect on this?
Generally, the healthier the population, the less medical services are needed.
Yeah.
But we are all humans, and we all have different medical needs. So we do our best to try to line services and supports for folks who have chronic conditions or who are experiencing illness, and try to really work with our vendors to ensure the best outcomes where we can.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Do the co-pays remain the same?
It depends. Each year, from where we're at, there were $5 decreases for members.
Last year?
So currently now.
So last year, we had a decrease in co-pays, as I remember.
For 2023.
Yes, and so moving forward for '24, we have an additional reduction in co-pays?
That work is still in progress with the BRC. So that group is convening now. And that's the second part of what I'll be presenting to you as
Beg
well.
your pardon, sorry.
So I emailed you, Commissioners, yesterday information that Christie provided. The deductible for employees is going down from last year, and the total cost to the general fund is actually going down slightly. So this whole contract is actually a slight decrease from the prior year.
Any other questions or comments? Gary, how do we approve this? Do we need a motion?
So let me actually read the line, which would have been in your consent agenda, and then if you agree, we'll put it on tomorrow's meeting. So the text is approval of the 2023 agreements with Providence Health Plan for administrative services for Clackamas County's self-funded medical plans. Total contract value is $26,661,157 for January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2023. Funding is through contributions and fees paid by county departments, employees, retirees, COBRA beneficiaries, and other agencies contracting with Clackamas County for Employee Benefits Administration, and includes $7,731,735 in budgeted county general funds.
I remember reading that yesterday, thank you, although the recommendation here isn't as descriptive, but I appreciate that very much.
So if you agree, Commissioners, we put this on tomorrow's business meeting agenda for your action.
Commissioner West.
I just have a quick question. Why are we removing the phrase unmarried from eligible family dependent definition?
What page?
It is on our staff report. It's on the
Second page.
Yeah.
So this is basically, these are,
That's a piece.
one of the things that we're trying to do is remove some of the language barriers that have been a problem for folks, and trying to make sure that accessibility for care is available for everybody. That aligning with recent legislation that's going to take effect at the beginning of the next year, that is based in the state of Oregon, preventing discriminatory actions related to some of these terms, marital status, for example. So this is one of the best practices that we were moving forward with.
I'm kind of doesn't answer my question, but kind of. If someone has a roommate, do we provide coverage for that person? So what is the designation here?
So we would be talking about married, legally married, domestic partners, same gender, opposite gender, all of those are covered under our plans.
Okay.
And so it's actually, I think that, and I apologize, but this is talking about, this is aligning with a different law that is basically saying that if an employee has a dependent child, in the past, it would say that you have to, if you're married, then you are no longer a qualifying dependent. So I'm sorry, I was misspeaking when I was looking at that initially. And so it's removing that because it's not a prohibition for the plan.
Oh, okay.
So they just need to be under age 26.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no objections to this moving forward, we'll consider it on consent agenda for tomorrow.
Tomorrow's meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item is also with Christie. This is employee benefits renewal, 2024 employee benefit renewals. Christy. Go, and there's a memo in your packet. Go ahead, Christy.
Right, thank you. So Chair Smith, this is really similar to what you were getting at before. Thank you for thinking forward like that. So what we're really doing is bringing information to you all. Chair, you requested some of this information last year when we were talking about renewals. And so we wanted to bring forward to the board information and some visibility about how the BRCs are functioning, and those high-level priorities in their bylaws are the first 2 bullet points on your packet, on your memo. In addition, we wanted to share with you the 4 items, the 4 areas that the BRC is looking at as we're looking at year-over-year supports we can provide to our employees and retirees who are on our health plans. So we gather this information and working with our vendors and Mercer, our benefits broker. We look at what utilization has been and where our health exposures are as far as cost controls. And then we try to identify program supports and education and outreach that we can provide to help improve the experience. So we wanted to just bring these forward to you, and the request is that we hear from you your feedback as to these priorities so that we can take this back to the BRCs when we're convening, and they can consider your feedback as they make changes for the next plan year.
I'm looking on page 1, and thank you for that, Christy, I appreciate it, remembering what I asked for last year. We see diabetes and obesity as controlling diabetes and as a chronic condition. You see that medical condition has been identified as one of the highest.
The combination, and what we also are seeing, that there are program supports that are available, so we feel like we are able to maybe affect some change with program management, with education, and our population does struggle with obesity, and that is a challenge, and we're not unlike other organizations and folks across the country.
Thank you. I like your education piece, education campaign with the carriers, and advertise health coaching and alternative care resources. I think we get weekly emails to anybody who participates in this. What really surprised me is the high claims for multiple sclerosis as a chronic condition. Is that correct?
Yes.
That really, really surprised me. I would have not guessed that. I would have lost on Jeopardy on that one. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, and sometimes it's not the number of claims, but it's the cost related to a certain claim. So it's not that we have a higher incidence of folks with MS, it's that the costs for treatment are very expensive. And as pharmaceutical interventions improve, those costs are also increasing as well. So it's a combination of number of claims and the seriousness of those claims and pharmaceutical interventions.
Do we see more MS claims in the last year compared to the previous year, or can you answer that?
We don't have that year over year. They showed up stronger last year. This is why this one came forward. We're always looking at those high claims to see if there's some interventions that we could bring forward.
And mental health, of course, the growing need for that. I appreciate that. Commissioner West.
Thank you again. I just want to clarify my understanding of the BRC. Do they review, why don't you explain what they do exactly, what their purpose is?
Yeah, you bet. So there are 2 BRCs, Benefits Review Committees at the county. There's one for General County, that's all employees except POA, and then there's POA. These are joint labor management committees, and they have been given the authority to make those benefit determinations, plan design. They do not have the ability to determine the contribution cost shares. That's in contract negotiations. But this is where their authority lies, to make plan design changes. Right, so what is the deductible?
Yep.
What is the copay? All of those factors.
That's what I thought, and I'm going to see if what I'm going to suggest or throw out there is applicable. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Diabetes, medication, and obesity, preventative care, specifically also around cardiology prevention, falls within this field, also within endocrinology. And there are a number of new medications that are brilliant at preventative measures around obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and other related afflictions or issues. Do we talk specifically about some of those medications being available or some of those novel state-of-the-art prevention measures that prevent worse disease going down the future? Because I can think of a few off the top of my head, but I just want to know if we're really focused on those very specific preventative medications and opportunities within healthcare.
We do. Thank you for the excellent question. In April and May, the BRC hears from Kaiser and Providence, all of our vendors, and they talk to us about utilization. They identify trends in our populations. They also identify novel treatments, exploratory measures that they might be taking. We learn all about that from them, and then we get recommendations on where we should be focusing for the next renewal, some things for us to consider. So we do get that information. We get a lot of that information, and then it's up to us to look at that and evaluate where do we think we can be most impactful. So it's always going to be a
recommendations today. If I gave, or do I? I literally have a few off the top of my head, but I didn't know if, I guess that's what it says what you're asking for. With prevention for cardiology, disease, and stroke, I think there's allowing people to not have to pay for affordable tests like the calcium scoring, where we do a quick sonogram and we can get what's called your calcium score and your Gaston score, and we can use that early on to prevent adverse actions in the future. Many insurances don't cover this, and sometimes many people, the $100, $200 out-of-pocket expense, like if you were to go to OHSU, is a barrier for some to get that or within that plan. And it's something that is relatively non-invasive, actually totally non-invasive, that's really impactful for understanding someone's risk factors moving forward. Also, medications like Ozempic now are often not covered for weight loss treatment. Well, if someone's working towards losing weight, it's almost only for diabetes, but it's $1,100 a month if we can actually help use it in a weight loss prevention program that includes overall lifestyle modifications. Those are two really important preventative measures, and the medication Repatha for lipid management. Those are some really innovative stuff that's happening in the preventive space within healthcare that sometimes people really have a barrier, and it helps us really do a great job of preventing future adverse outcomes and reducing those risks. I know that's really specific. I threw three or four things out there. Is that what you're looking for today? Because I don't know if those specific things are what you guys are talking about when we do this.
I appreciate your
Gary?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to answer that, Christy. So the Benefits Review Committee meets in the next 2 weeks when you're on recess. They get to make the final decision, not you. This was a board 30 years ago made this decision.
Okay.
So if you have input you'd like to give to Christy, she needs it either today or offline, because Commissioner West, your knowledge base is very specific. If you'd like to share that offline, that's fine, but she just needs it before the end of this week. What she could share with the Benefits Review Committee.
I can give you something along those lines in a written format, like in a better synopsis than what I just threw out there today, if that would be helpful in this process for them to consider.
Christy, do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate your input.
I am hesitant, Commissioner West, going forward. I do not want to cause any more costs. We may be doing it in our wellness section of what Clackamas County has to offer, but I'm not interested in creating more programs that are going to cost more down the line. I do understand where you're coming from, very much so. In this post-COVID era, I do think the incidence of heart attacks may be on the rise. Thank you.
Things that we are considering, so thank you for your additional input.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I have a question about monitor claims and explore cost containment options for psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis. Why is that? Why is cost containment necessary? Is it because of the cost of the biologics that are prescribed?
It's it dovetails nicely off of what Commissioner West is talking about. There are a lot of costs associated with a lot of these novel treatments. And so we're looking at how, when we're looking at some of those things, again, this is a type of claim that showed up that wasn't showing up on our high claims regularly, has popped up. That and MS, it's always been, there's always, one or two, but both of these have kind of gone up a little bit. So it's an area that got our attention in talking also with our vendors. So the cost containment is really around, we want to get the best outcome for the most number of folks at the best cost, and trying to keep that in balance so that we can continue to offer these benefits year over year. So cost containment in some of those cases would be looking at the formulary, which is the list of pharmaceuticals that are approved for the health plan. It also might be looking at new treatment protocols to try to minimize the duration or the severity of an illness. So there are a number of factors that can go into that. Does that help address your question?
It does, because I am a psoriatic and was about to get prescribed a biologic. I said, no, I don't want to take an immunosuppressant. So it would be about, I think, $30,000 a year for the medication, and had to go through a special process to get approved for it. So I went to the therapeutic clinic in Iceland, and the trip there and the therapy was so much less. So essentially, I'm wondering, that kind of is under alternative options, but it's also awkward because you have to travel to the clinic there and get the treatments with the special. But I don't know if it's even possible to have anything like that at least covered, because it is known internationally as a psoriasis treatment option, as is a trip to the Dead Sea to soak in those waters. So I know it sounds silly, but I've saved folks a lot of money by going to an alternative treatment, and yet I won't get, and I go there specifically for those treatments, and I can't get any medical,
What I recommend for everyone is that when they have medical treatment, feel free to submit a claim for reimbursement, and we will always have the opportunity to determine whether the plan will pay a portion of it as if you had seen an in-network provider. So it's something to consider. Sometimes there's an excluded service. So we share that with everybody. So feel free to reach out to our team, and we'll explore with you.
I was just wondering, because it really is, sometimes alternative methodologies really are important.
And it's
So, okay, thank you for that.
non-pharmaceuticals, what I like.
Well, it really works. I mean,
We do keep those alternative therapies in mind as well. The BRC looks at those, and we have those in both the Kaiser and the Providence plans. And that's an area that we continue to explore because we hear good results.
I'm sorry, what did you say, light booth therapy or?
Alternative
therapies, okay. And they do have a physician, and I mean, it is it's under medical care, and you have to get your dermatologist or your physician to recommend that you go there. So I'll look into that. Thank you. Okay.
I do want to connect. Some of the things I threw out there today might be too wildly expensive to even really consider. But I think there's a couple, especially with the calcium scoring, with a CT calcium score, that is not widely expensive, and it is very effective within preventative measures. It's much more expensive to have somebody chronically dealing with heart disease than it is to have a basic scan done that we know works, especially if you're going through a preventative cardiology facility. And then if ordered by a cardiologist, if necessary, one that includes dye to get a better look at the vessels. Those are way more affordable, and it might be a little unusual to have an insurance plan cover that, but I think it pays for itself, tenfold if we potentially offer something like that.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Gary, what's our action going forward on this?
So on this one, Christy has heard your feedback, and Commissioner West, if we'll have staff work with you and Christy offline by the end of the week to share your input. And
Do we take this up at,
So eventually, the Benefits Review Committee will come back to you, and you'll have to bless their plan.
okay,
That'll be later in the fall.
okay. All righty, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christy. Chair, would you like to do one or two more items, or would you like to adjourn for the lunch break?
What time are we going to reconvene?
1:30.
That's too, well, you don't need an hour and a half, no.
Okay.
Let's just go to 12:30, as per the schedule.
No,
Can we?
the schedule doesn't say that.
We can't?
Correction, Chair, the schedule has us quitting this at 12:30.
Well, mine says, actually, mine says differently.
It's just 12:30.
So we,
Mine says we go to 12:30.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I just said.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go to 12:30 is what I said. We don't need an hour and a half lunch break.
okay, we will keep going then. All right, next, demolition of county property, 1011 Courthouse Road. There's a memo in your packet. Nancy Bush and Jeff Jorgensen will present.
Good morning, Commissioners. So we're here today to talk to you about a demolition of a property that we have here on this campus and asking for your approval of that. So it is on our Courthouse Road. It's a 1011 Courthouse Road. There is a photo in your packet. This is the TSC building, which has actually been a building for many different things. It started out as a library in 1962. So as part of the courthouse and the connection that we need to do to Warner Milne, and also for extra parking that we're going to need, eventually this will be parking. The building will not be taken down, I think, until sometime in '25. I think the courthouse will actually be done before we take it down, because this is not part of what the state will help us pay for, this demolition. We are expecting it to be about $120,000, but it will be in a contract that we're soon putting out that will be for other parking on the campus as well as the connection. We also just have a reminder here, too, that the TS2 building will be taken down as well. That is also going to be a part of, we will have to put part of the connection there to Warner Milne for the courthouse. So we can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions regarding this? Gary, is this a budgeted for item?
It is not currently budgeted, but it will be put in the proposed budget for next fiscal year 2024-2025. The cost will be $120,000 of general
Providing
fund.
the cost stays where it is, I don't know.
Correct.
Is it subject to cost overruns? I don't know. Makes me crazy. Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, Nancy, if the footprint that these buildings are on are not going to be needed for new courthouse parking, what is the urgency to have these buildings removed?
So, well, first of all, the TS2 building has to come down.
Okay.
That's part of,
Okay, that's part of the parking.
that is, no, it's part of the connection that goes to Warner Milne.
Okay.
Okay.
And the other building?
So this building, which is the old library building, needs to, eventually it will have to come down for parking, and it is more economical to do it now.
Okay, okay, I understand, okay, good.
What is our action on this?
So while I could do this, I don't want to tear a building down without the board's approval, so I'm
Do we
seeking.
need a motion?
Yes, please.
I'll entertain a motion.
Let's see here. Do we-
Recommendation on the bottom of page 1. Commissioner
Okay,
Scholl.
I move that we approve the staff recommendation for the demolition of the building at 1011 Courthouse Road.
Second?
Commissioner Scholl has moved that we eventually demolish the building at 1011 Courthouse Road. But you have two buildings.
The other building is already in the approval because it's part
okay.
of the courthouse.
All right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. So this is for the demolition of that building. It is not approval of the costs associated with it, correct, Gary?
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
And just to add, that will be in a contract that's coming, because they'll have to do a bid for that. So you'll see that in a contract, the actual cost. All right,
Thank you very much. Up next.
All right, next is the Clackamas Addictions Recovery Summit, which is your blue ribbon panel update, and I'm presenting on behalf of Cindy Becker. She has a memo in your packet. She just wants to confirm the 3 priorities that will be the topic of the summit. And these,
Gary, Commissioner West has excused himself for a moment. Can we do something else and come back to this?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for the disruption.
Okay. All right, how about supportive housing services carryover update? Rod Cook And Adam Brown from Health, Housing, Human Services will present. There's a memo in your packet.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have with me Adam Brown, Deputy Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, and he'll be speaking on this issue.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Commissioners. Adam Brown, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, and Human Services. So we have two updates for you this afternoon. The first is a second update to the anticipated balance of supportive housing services measure funds as we close out fiscal year 22-23, our second year of SHS programming. The second is an update on our plans to proceed with solicitations for construction of Clackamas Village and proposals for navigation and resource center capital infrastructure. As you'll recall, at a policy session on June 14th, you approved of a plan for one-time and limited-term uses of the anticipated carryover balance of SHS funding going into the current fiscal year, 23-24, allocating the anticipated $58.6 million across 5 priority areas, including $16.8 million for capital needs. During the policy session, staff apprised you of a good chance that, given the current pace of SHS revenue collections for 22-23, and based on preliminary information from Metro about the expected continued pace of those collections, the total revenue collected would exceed Metro's December forecast amount, which was the amount on which we based our budget. We came to you with a follow-up on June 27th, informing you that Metro had revised its forecasted collection amount from $225 million to $325 million, and that Clackamas County could expect to receive an additional $21.3 million, increasing the anticipated carryover balance from $58.6 million to around $80 million. That was in June, right? So now our fiscal year is closed. We have the final revenue collections in. And with those final revenue collections and our fiscal year nearly closed, there is now a near final carryover balance of SHS funds going into 23-24. The final revenue collections came in slightly higher than Metro's revised forecast at $23.8 million over that $21.3 million. And in addition, our second year of SHS programming increased spending more than 5-fold over the first year, going from $3.3 million to approximately $17.9 million. But the actual spending is coming in a little bit under what we forecasted due to provider spending and things like that. So there's an additional $3.9 million of programmatic underspending. So when you pair that with our unspent contingencies and reserves of $3.2 million, that adds an additional $7.1 million. So a lot of numbers. I'll try to break this down as easily as I can. So based on the final revenue collections at $23.8 million, more than budgeted, and with programmatic underspending and contingency and stabilization reserves of $7.1 million, there is an unallocated $30.9 million in one-time carryover funds to add to the $58.6 million that you approved in the spending plan. This makes the near total final carryover balance $89.5 million, and I say near final because there's last-minute year-end close stuff, but the margin here is very, very small. So that's near final. And I know our time is short here today with your heavy agenda, and so we have set a policy session for September 20th to come back to you with recommendations for allocating the capital needs funding across a series of investment categories informed by projects in development and your priorities and system needs. And that policy session will also include recommendations for allocating the additional $30.9 million. So we've teed up a conversation in the future when you have more time to consider that. But in the meantime, we're ready to take next steps on a couple of items. First, we have preliminary site plans for the Clackamas Village, which is an expansion of village-style transitional housing on the site adjacent to the current Veterans Village. That preliminary set of plans is attached to your packet here today, and we're ready to work with the architect on a more detailed set of plans and carry out a formal solicitation for construction bids. Once that process is complete, we'll bring you a contract for final approval to proceed with construction, and the funding for this will come from our capital needs portion of the carryover SHS spend down plan. Just about done here. The second item that we're ready to move forward on is a solicitation for proposals from the community to invest in resource, and navigation center capital infrastructure. So our SHS local implementation plan identified system navigation and access coordination as a priority investment area. Consistent with this stated priority, the solicitation will offer capital funding to support community partners in the siting of service-enriched resource centers that will serve as access points for the diverse array of programs and services that enable households experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness to successfully end their homelessness and thrive. Resource centers are safe, welcoming, and supporting spaces where people can access supportive services to address housing barriers, including addiction and recovery services, physical and behavioral health services, and unemployment services, along with connections to permanent housing. So again, once our solicitation for these proposals is complete, we'll bring any contracts to you for formal approval before proceeding with the allocation, and funding will come from the capital needs area of our SHS carryover plan.
We have two things here today. I will have some questions, Commissioner West.
You have a map for us and some buildings. This is cool. Always like to see the pictures. One of my thoughts is I've been to this site. I've, wandered around it. There's like an old road that's not really a road now that goes down closer to the creek, with like a flat area. Is that space not usable?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into that. Talk with the folks who are currently on the site, look at it a little bit, and talk with the development agency about.
I'm wondering if that road is repairable and there's some usable space that would fit our purposes. I'd like to maybe see that. I did a recent tour with Commissioner Scholl to the safe parking site down by the Salvation Army over by Sutherland Road on Marine Drive area, like 33rd and Marine Drive area. I think I'm getting that right, by Dignity Village. I was really impressed with how they utilized, they took containers and they reformatted those to be like one container would have 4 maybe bathrooms and showers in it. Then there was a laundry service, and then there was a communal cover area that was quite nice, and then a number of parking spaces. They also had there some prototype, like, what'd you call those, Commissioner Scholl? They were like tiny houses. What did we see?
Pods?
Pods, yeah.
Pods.
Yeah, and so, this is similar to what I'm seeing here. Are these gonna be different than there's a couple versions at the Veterans Village. Are we growing and progressing in our pod knowledge? Is it like, is it contracting services with somebody like Salvation Army that has access to these type of pods already ready to go and put them up? What does that contracting piece look like, I guess is my question, if you could give me a little more detail around that.
Yeah, so there's kind of, a whole market has emerged. We see this with ADUs, and, there's pallet shelters that people are using for the safe rest type villages and things like that. So the architect has provided kind of a sketch of what we think the site would look like. Those are modular units that are pretty sophisticated, right? It's much more like a tiny house than it is a pallet shelter on that continuum, and that's important for the longevity of our investment. The pallet shelters, I have some experience seeing those in use at other sites around our community, and they're good for a handful of years, right? But they don't provide people the same level of insulation from the conditions, and the longevity of the investment. So I think we see this more on the current Veterans Village style, right, where you have a more sophisticated built pod. So I think it's a little bit to be determined on whether that's something that they fabricate off-site and bring on, or if they actually build on-site, and it may be, a combination of things, right? They fabricate the materials off-site and then bring them on for the actual construction, but that'll be teased out as part of the solicitation.
And do you sometimes solicit to, like, I don't know, like a big organization like Salvation Army, and then they just put it all up? Or is it done in pieces, like this is our solicitation to architecture, this is our service provider, this is our, is it done in chunks like that? Or do we have a one-size-fits-all come and do it for us?
What we'll be soliciting for is one agency to do that start to finish, the construction side. The service provision side will be a separate solicitation. But we want one agency to oversee all of the site prep work that's needed, all the way to laying the landscaping when we're close to being done. And that's different from what happened with the Vets Village, right?
Yeah.
It was a little bit, different folks were holding different aspects of that, including the county itself doing some of the work.
One thing that I noticed about the Vetch Village that I hope we don't have to repeat here is I'm a little concerned with like the amount of power lines that are like, it's like a lot. And so I didn't know if it's feasible to have those power lines put underground, not just for safety of that wooded area, the creek down there environmentally, but also just because it looks a little chaotic, a little crazy. There's, a ton of power lines into one central source coming into the Veterans Village that I think could be better managed. Just a side thought, and that's all my thoughts today, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl and then Commissioner Schrader.
Yes, thank you. A couple things. One, on the SHS dollar carryover, the $30 million that's not yet dedicated. You're going to brief us on that in September. I'm hoping that date will be after we meet with the Clackamas Addiction and Recovery Summit. I kind of want to put all those pieces together before I hear your plan for the $30 million. On your site plan here for the Clackamas Village, I like it. What I see in this is efficiency, a good design. I also note that your housing here is built on a foundation, long-term. These are not just pods. This is a actually well-designed, long-term facility. My question for you today is, one, is 24 units going to be enough? Next question is 14 parking spaces enough? We'll get answers later on. But according to your site plan, and looking at the topography of the site, you probably got it about pretty much maxed out or close to it. But my question would be, would we get greater economy if we could add one more of these 12-unit designs that you have in there somewhere else? That's something to look at.
Yeah, and as we get into this process with the construction bids and working with the contractor, we can certainly entertain how we might be able to engineer the configuration to maximize the opportunity. There is another version of this drawing where you see the sets of 5 there, right, around a central area. Well, there is another version of the drawing where at the right end of each of those 5, there's another 3.
Okay.
And so we've kind of toyed with
So you're
what
looking
is
at
striking the right balance on efficiency.
Okay, good, yeah. And also on Commissioner West's comment about electricity, yeah, this lends itself to all underground utilities, so.
Yeah, and I think we learned a lot with Veterans
sure you
Village,
did,
right? And this will be, we've learned a lot, we can take those learnings, we can incorporate them here, be really intentional about what we're trying to build.
This is, of course, a lot different than Vets Village. Thank you.
I feel like there's more space right below this too, like when I've done the site.
Well, I think it's
We'll
very
look into it.
steep. I'm not
There's a
sure.
road, an old road you can walk down.
Commissioner
Worked for
Schrader,
me.
Commissioner Schrader, thank you.
So, so this is a little bit more permanent, a little more better, probably pod design. Is there going to be any discussion about with the current vet villages of eventually replacing those pods that are less? I mean, in other words, are we going to be moving people who are in the pods now into this housing as like a transition? Or is it really added value or added housing for people who just need it?
This is intended to be added value. And
Okay.
I can talk with our service provider, Do Good Multnomah, and see what they think, like, what is the useful life of the existing pods at Vets Village? Are there improvements that we can make to improve the longevity of those sites? Things like that, but we haven't considered that as part of what we're discussing here.
Here. And I guess the other thing is we're talking about a navigation resource center. And I know that there's a movement in Oregon City with, to actually purchase a property that is going to house 3 of the nonprofits potentially. Is that something that you're planning on investing in, or are we planning on investing in something that is much more like what we saw in Austin, Texas, in terms of a large campus, full meal deal, people who are homeless, then moving them through a system of different kind of housing profiles to finally get them into.
So you asked 2 questions, Commissioner Schrader. Gary, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yes, I'm happy to. So the Vets Village, believe it or not, that's still a pilot. It's like we're on a 3-year pilot now. You have not formally directed us what to do. We're continuing to operate the site as is, but that is a policy decision. I assume you want to keep it, but you have not made that as a board yet.
Okay. You're right,
The Clackamas Village, I've heard you loud and clear, Commissioners, that staff's taking too long, which is why we're moving forward now on plans, designs, all in an effort to move forward to get something moving by the end of this calendar year. So that's why you're getting this update here today. And I'm sorry if I missed a question you asked, Commissioner.
Well, you wanted to do the navigation center. And
Navigation, let's get
My apologies. So actually, this is referring to the proposed site in Oregon City by some external folks. So this is supporting that effort. That's what we're referring to here.
Okay, that was my question.
And Commissioner, we have a responsibility to carry out formal processes for allocating resources. So this will tease out proposals from the community to invest in capacity like that.
Right.
Okay, so Gary, you make a good point. We have not finalized the Vet Village, nor do we own the land underneath it. We do not own the land on the proposed new site, and I have talked about that ad nauseum. We're still waiting for the development agency to finalize our plans going forward. I assume that's going to be done before construction begins on this, that your department has a deed from the development agency because we really do need to clean up these loose ends. We need to reimburse the development agency for this property and the property at the Vets Village. That's very important.
Correct. That's in process. That will also be done by the end of this calendar year, the transfer of the properties to Clackamas County.
Yes. I'm talking about that forever.
Yep. We're on it.
Okay, thank you. So, and you have monies set aside for those land purchases in this program going forward.
Yeah, and we've been working very closely with that team on moving this along.
The development agency, yes, is a Clackamas County department, or division, I should say, but that money is very important to them as they go forward and try to create more taxable properties and bring in businesses. That's their charge. And for me, the return on the ROI is very important on them being reimbursed for that. Thank you. We are not taking action on this today. Correct. And thank you very much for the update. We look forward to seeing you in September.
And to answer Commissioner Schull's earlier question, yes, your Blue Ribbon Committee happens first before staff's coming back on September 20th. All right. May I move back to the Blue Ribbon panel, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Clackamas Addictions Recovery Summit, AKA the Blue Ribbon Panel, is coming up in September. And commissioners individually, you have shared input on what you'd like the priorities to be for the panel and the summit to work on. And Cindy Becker has compiled that and wrote a memo to you. And I'm here just to seek your confirmation. These are the 3 key areas you'd like to focus on in the summit. They are policies, programs, and services, data, and next steps. And again, it's in the memo, but high level policies, programs, and services, questions like, what are the components of a recovery system of care? What are best practices and lessons learned from other jurisdictions? What policies should the board be considering? How does employment fit in this picture? How do we develop a recovery campus center with this work? What are the innovative treatment and policies to prevent addiction and homelessness moving forward? Under data, what data and credible information sources should the board look at? And under next steps, what are low-hanging immediate actions the board can take, and then what are longer-term solutions? So would you agree that these 3 key areas are what you'd like to see as an outcome of the summit? And if
Yeah,
not, please
I
tell me.
do. I think that is seriously, Commissioners, more than enough to discuss in a 1.5-day summit. But other commissioners want to have input on this. Commissioner Scholl, you ready?
Yeah, I think the concerns I submitted to you are reflected in this, so I'm comfortable with what you have here.
I as well. Thank you, Commissioner West.
I can hear some of mine in there for sure. I have one that I don't know if they're going to really be able to answer, coming from the outside, potentially is the workforce piece. That is a question we have to answer. I don't know if this, the recovery summit's going to be able to tackle that in this 1.5 days, is my only feedback.
I think if we add workforce on that, we're going to jump down a rabbit hole that is not designed for this summit. So I would appreciate if we let staff work on the workforce development issue as a side. If you're okay with that.
I'm okay. It looks like Commissioner Schrader has a.
I
I'm
know,
okay with it, yeah.
I'm asking if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I didn't know if you saw, because you're looking at me.
No, I see the light. So so you know, is the type of glasses that I have, they're trifocals, okay? And Commissioner Scholl's light is clear on the far end. So when I'm looking down and straight ahead, oftentimes I don't see your green light. It's not because I'm ignoring you. I literally don't see it as well as the other lights. Thank you very much, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I think I'll have, as I said, I'm meeting with Bridget Daisy tomorrow, and I'll just add this to my topic. We don't actually have to include it in this summit, but we can work on a workforce component. They already do expungement when people coming out of the jail, and they already have opportunities for training. So it's really, I think, going to be folding into this what they're really already doing. Okay, so.
No, I totally agree.
But I'm not overly concerned that, I agree that this is a lot to tackle right now. And I do think in Austin, there was a workforce component, if I'm not mistaken.
Within that program.
Yeah, they did. But like I said, that's what we have a workforce board for. So.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Commissioners. Gary, what's next?
So if you're okay, then we're staying with the 3 priorities, and we'll take out the employment workforce section. Great. Thank you. Next, 2 letters of support for 2 planning grant applications. Dan Johnson from Transportation and Development will present. There's a memo in your packet. Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Chair Smith, Commissioners, I guess to make things more efficient and effective, I'm just going to answer the question that you had for Adam a second ago. That lowland area is impacted by floodplain and stream buffer corridors and overlays. So that's
Thank you for that, Dan.
Yep, you're very welcome. Yep. On August 9th, you approved our long-range planning program. Essentially, one of those projects within that plan was this diagnostic report. How do we simplify our plan use codes and requirements to not only benefit staff, but also to benefit our public? Essentially, we're looking for the board to authorize the chair to sign requests for 2 specific grants. One was through the DLCD's Housing Planning Assistance Grant, and the other is through Metro's 2040 Planning and Development Grant. Be happy to answer. And basically, we're just looking for outside sources to fund these programs in this plan.
Commissioners, questions or comments on this? I will accept a motion. There is a request on page 1.
I move we approve the attached letter of support for 2 grant applications for planning and zoning.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved that we approve the attached letters of support for 2 grant applications for planning and zoning for DLCD Housing Planning Assistance and the Metro 2040 Planning and Development Grant, and Commissioner Scholl has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Dan, for doing this. Gary.
Great, thank you. Next item is Budget Committee recruitment process. So the County Budget Committee has 2 current vacancies. One is Kenny Cernak's position, and he has reapplied, and Wilda Park's position, she has not reapplied. There were 4 applicants for both positions, and a few weeks ago I asked you who would like to interview, and 4 of you said you would. It was all commissioners except Commissioner Shull, who said he'll let the others handle it. Due to unfortunate scheduling events, none of you were able to attend the interviews, so those have not happened yet.
Except for the chair.
I'm sorry, Chair. Chair, you were able to attend.
I could have done this by myself, commissioners. I could have said, bam, bam, bam. But you know what? That's really not wise. Now, is that? So the Budget Committee is one of our most important committees. Gary, you have a recommendation.
Yes, so I recommend that you go ahead and reappoint Kenny Cernak to his seat. He's done a very, very good job on the Budget Committee. And then for the second position, because the applicant pool, there will only be 2 applicants left because 1 dropped out. If you want to reopen the application for the next month at least, and then in later September, you can then interview those candidates. That's my recommendation.
I will accept a motion to reappoint Kenny Cernak to the Budget Committee.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved, we appoint Kenny Cernak to a second term on the Budget Committee, and Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, take the poll.
Commissioner Shull,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Now, regarding our appointment for the 1 unfilled position, I think, Gary, several of them dropped out. I'm not sure we had 2 candidates remaining, honestly. So I think that we should go ahead and reopen that process. Nobody's going to be paying attention this summer, honestly. You know, people are 1 foot out the door on vacations, and you can't blame them. So I would, at this time, go ahead, staff, to do that when they think the appropriate time is. And who would like to sit with me on the Budget Committee appointments?
I'd like to. It'd be fun.
Okay, but we have these dates set.
Okay.
That the candidates can show up at a certain time. So we have to be mindful of the people who we're interviewing because they're volunteers and some of them work.
Got it.
Okay, Martha, myself, does anybody else want to do this?
Chair, I do not need to be involved just for logistics. It gets too complicated. You guys are completely capable of doing this to make it easier on the people applying.
Thank you very much. So Martha and I will do that. If you're okay with that, that'd be great. We'll open up a new recruitment, Gary, when staff thinks it's appropriate.
We are on it.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, Chair, I do recommend now you adjourn until the lunch session.
We will recess for lunch and reconvene at 1:30. Gary, what's next?
All right, now we're returning to the issues list from this morning. Why don't we do the tolling letter right now?
That's a good
On the
idea.
topic. So this is the C4 tolling value statement finalization. Commissioner Savas, if you'd lead the topic, please.
Okay, a couple of weeks ago, we came to you before the C4 meeting with a revised, updated value statement, which is the black and white version. Okay? Recent discussions as late as this afternoon and yesterday with some of the city councilors and mayors, we revised that a little bit, made it a little bit stronger than it already was. So this is stronger. The first one that's in gray is stronger than the original one, and the one that's in color is even stronger than that. So my ask here today, because we don't know if we're going to have complete agreement with all the cities, my ask here is to approve both with a preference. Which one you prefer? I prefer the one that's in color, that's revised. That's my preference. But if we approve both, then we have the flexibility to go back at C4 and as revised.
Okay, Paul, when's this letter due?
It's not really due. There's not a due. This is the value statement, so it's really not
Okay.
not due, but it gives us a foundation
Okay.
to continue on with everyone else and have it as a tool.
I read both of these, and the revisions in the color statement, I do like. That is my preference. It's just cleaned up the language a little bit, you know, a little bit stronger verbs and nouns. You know, those are always good coming from a journalism major. So, commissioners, conversation, Commissioner West, I believe you're up.
Yeah, I prefer the stronger one, shocker. And do we need to have a preference? Can we just say, this is it, let's do it, let's move forward?
Well, C4 approved it 2 weeks ago, the black and white
Right,
one,
right,
right?
correct.
And so everyone that was in the meeting this afternoon.
already
at lunch
approved this.
Well, we're part of that, but also like the newest version. So what we don't have, that's not all of C4. That's just only
Got
a
it.
fraction of C4.
Right.
So I'm happy to make the motion I would make is that approve both letters with a preference
Towards
for
the
the most
color.
recent version.
I can support that, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Scholl? There's a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Commissioner Savas has made a motion that we approve of both of the C4 values statement letter on tolling, but with preference to the colored version, which is the most recent edits. Is that right? And Commissioner Scholl has seconded that motion. Further discussion. I will say, since there's not a timeline on this, I'm very comfortable with this motion. I mean, if we had to present something like next week, there might be difficulties in that. Any further discussion on this tolling letter? Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Emergency Preparedness Council update. Daniel Nybauer, Interim Director, Disaster Management, will present. There's a memo in your packet.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Smith, Daniel Nybauer, Interim Director, Disaster Management. I'm here today to give the board an update on the Emergency Preparedness Council status and work, as well as receive board input on the bylaw revisions that the council is currently considering. The Emergency Preparedness Council is an advisory board on emergency preparedness for the Board of County Commissioners and Disaster Management. It was formed in 2022 as an initiative by Chair Smith in response to the 2020 wildfires and 2021 ice storms. The initially approved bylaws called for 15 voting members recruited from the committee, 9 ex officio non-voting members that included all 5 commissioners, and 5 standing subcommittees addressing topics chosen by the council. While the council has had some opportunities to get into the work of emergency preparedness, it has spent much time working out its organizational structure, processes, and workload. This workload includes quarterly meetings, monthly subcommittee meetings, meeting preparation, and research into topics of interest. This work has required significant time commitment from council members. There has been a strong core set of members moving their work forward, but some members have had to step back due to the workload. While we've had a near constant recruitment for the council, we've had few applications, and the council has been unable to meet with the quorum since December. In addition, of the 5 standing committees, only 2 have been able to meet on a regular basis, and those 2 have been meeting jointly in order to have enough members present. At the June 26 quarterly meeting, the council discussed these issues and potential revisions to the bylaws. From that, the current chair of the council revised the bylaws, and those revisions were distributed to the council. There was feedback from one member that was addressed by the council chair. The revisions helped to address the 2 challenges faced by the council: the inability to achieve a quorum and the lack of participation in the subcommittees. The revisions are reducing the voting membership to a total of 7 to 9 members, remove the requirement for subcommittees and form them on an ad hoc or as-needed basis, remove ex officio members from the formal roster, leaving them as on-call subject matter experts that the council can call as needed, removing the secretary position, which is a function being performed by disaster management staff, and add language regarding public requests for information. So the questions for discussion of the board are: is the EPC meeting the board's expectations, and is the council serving its intended purpose? The third question may be better to answer after the first 2.
Well, if you ask that question, no, this EPC is not meeting my expectations anyway for how it is. Gee, you've been, how long has this been going on? 18 months?
Approximately.
About 18 months. And usually, and I know many, many members on this particular council, they're very, very, very intelligent and really want to dive down and do some work. This board has yet to hear a recommendation from them. Why is that, Daniel?
The council had a list of recommendations developed in December. However, the meeting ran long, and every meeting since then, they've been unable to achieve a quorum to bring their recommendations forward.
Well, there's many reasons why people have left, and I'm not going to air that today because that's not, it's inappropriate. But I do think leadership has a great deal to do with the reason why people have left this organization. So as far as appointing new members, what have you done as director to bring forth nominations to appoint those vacancies?
We've had recruitments pretty much constantly open, trying to recruit new members in. We've reached out to community organizations. We've put up flyers in libraries, anywhere we know that the community is gathering. We've reached out to other emergency management and emergency preparedness organizations within the county, asking and soliciting they're interested. We've gone to CPOs and tried to solicit information or solicit interest for folks, and we vet them through and try to bring them through as quick as we can when we do have that interest. We've just received very few
Did you get any?
applications. We have, and we actually have one that's coming up later today on the agenda, but we only get one or two at a time.
Well, one or two is better than none at all.
Yes.
You could have brought us, we view that all the time. We have a council that has 20 members. We need to fill 10, but we only have 2 applications. We go ahead and do that.
We brought them forward as we've received them.
So your vice president of the organization, Kimberly Abels, resigned 6 months ago,
Correct.
and that position hasn't been filled.
We have asked for nominations and we received none.
Okay, all righty. I do think there's somebody that might be interested in that now. Do you agree?
I understand there will be a nomination at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner West.
So we had, I mean, I know for a fact, in my city of Wilsonville, specifically even Charbonneau, people really care about this issue. Also, we just recently had a number of really tough situations, as we're all aware, over the last couple of years. Do we target our marketing to get people to fill this board in those specific areas that are impacted the most recently? Do we try to focus on those community leaders or the other city councilors or board members? Do we go deep within the network to find people? Have we reached out to any Charbonneau meetings? Like they do meetings all the time. Just trying to figure out, like, are we going there and trying?
Certainly. We did have a Charbonneau member who left due to other time commitments. And we've gone as deep as we can. We're always welcome for more suggestions to help us recruit more members. We're trying everything we can, so.
Have we reached out to our 16 cities and asked them to help us recruit within their cities?
We have a monthly meeting with emergency management representatives from those cities, and we have asked and solicited at every single one of the meetings over the past several months.
And those cities, can they put out solicitations also to the?
Absolutely. We've asked them to forward on the information.
Okay. I know that Charbonneau has kind of a government affairs, civic kind of group that is quite robust and meets often. I hope that they're aware of our need to fill this board and get it off the ground. I think it could bring a ton of value if we could get it off the ground.
I'm happy to go back to them.
Yeah,
Certainly.
and maybe, and just an idea that I had, because I know that they were frequently in front of me as a city councilor, so I'm just putting on like my little sphere hat to be helpful. Have we also partnered with our hospital systems and other special districts, the fire, to see if there's anybody that within their sphere that may be interested in this also?
Yeah, we advertise at the Fire Defense Board meetings. We put it out. We do have currently an ex officio member that's with the Fire Defense Board. We have a vacant position, which is with the Public Health Systems, that we had difficulty maintaining someone in there. At least initially, the health systems were overwhelmed and unable to offer there. But we have asked the hospital emergency managers for representation consistently.
Nonprofits like American Red Cross or the search and rescue group that's over here on 224, have we reached out to them?
I don't know specifically on the search and rescue groups, but the Red Cross and a lot of the other CBOs we work with, we have asked. I can double check on the search and rescue groups.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few people over the last several months, and it seems to me, I'd like to hear your recommendation, Daniel, seems to me that eliminating the subcommittee groups would probably make a lot more sense for a lot of folks and get the focus coordinated together, bring everyone together. What's your recommendation for us on that topic?
The revisions that the committee is moving forward and that the council chair has written does include reducing those subcommittees down to an as-needed basis. Let the council itself decide this is a topic we want to and solicit that. Having 5 means that there's at least 3 voting members, and sometimes people double up, and then by the time you add a chair to each one of those committees, it starts presenting a large burden to those members. So I think that they would appreciate being able to form committees as they see fit. We started by soliciting interest from the committee, asking them for what 5 topics they want to do. They came up with that. But again, we've only been able to get people to come to communications and emergency preparedness committees. There does not seem to be interest in the other groups.
Right. The other thing I've heard, and I know we have very busy schedules, and it's hard for just get 5 of us together at one time. And originally, when we had their first meeting, we all got together for this. But going forward, the recommendation that I heard was, and it's not included on there, is try to get at least a commissioner to attend these meetings as well. And maybe if there's a commitment for us to have 1 or 2 or 3 backups, if one of us can't make it or schedule it, that we're in attendance, that they give them a little bit, feeling a little bit more collaboration directly with the board. But that's just a suggestion to my colleagues on the table.
It's not a bad suggestion, Paul.
Yep.
I do like that. On page 2, the recommendation is, instead of the 5 committees, and instead create subcommittees on an ad hoc basis, the 5 committees on an ad hoc basis. So if there was a need for that, we would leave them there, but they necessarily would not have people assigned to them. Is that what that means?
This is suggesting getting rid of those 5 subcommittees altogether, let the council talk about, and so if they decide that we would like a subcommittee that is around emergency preparedness and
So let the council do it themselves.
let the council decide it and decide, should we do this? They can vote on their own, come up with that ad hoc committee, and that committee can be there as long as it's serving the purpose they need. And if they complete that work, the body work, then that committee can go away, and another one will come up when the work is needed.
As needed. So removing ex officio members from the formal roster, do we have any ex officio members? What does that mean?
So the 5 commissioners serve as ex officio members, although you're happy to say that we have 5 subject matter experts. I'm trying to remember them all: law enforcement, fire, public works, utilities, and public health and hospitals. We have 3 of those staffed right now. We're having trouble with public works. We had Martin, who did a great job, but he had to pull back. And in public health, we have. They're there and they attend and answer questions. However, we've seen very little questions solicited there, and these are individuals that are working full-time jobs. And they've all committed to coming to meetings as questions are presented to them, or happy to reach out and get there, but it relieves a little bit of pressure from them from attending these meetings.
Well, if we remove them, can they still attend on a volunteer basis?
Absolutely, they're all
And
public
would
meetings.
they?
Yes. I know,
So you want to remove the requirement, is that what you're saying?
right, they can come as needed, and they've all offered the opportunity, if questions are there, that any council member can reach out to them and request to attend a meeting or answer questions by email.
And you say remove the secretary officer position as this role continues to be supported by disaster management staff. Thank you. I do think the secretary position should be staff people because the recording of it is very important to be done. I think that just goes with any of our ABCs. And then the addition of language about EPC business being subject to public records request. Talk about that.
That was not in the bylaws,
Okay.
and on council review, they requested that we add that in there. County council review.
And so if we approve this today, what's that going to do for you?
This is allowing us to help the EPC bylaws, EPC revise their bylaws, and then we hope in the meeting in September, they will have enough members to approve that change. If they don't, we will be talking with county council about how we go about approving revised bylaws.
So we're reducing a little bit of the workload, and we are reducing the quorum requirement. So what is required for a quorum if we were to vote for this?
We're looking at seven to nine members. So I'd look to
So
Council,
so
there,
a
we're looking
minimum
at
of 4 for a
4
quorum?
to 5 for a quorum.
Stephen Madcore is shaking his head. Okay. 4 to 7, 4 to 5
4 to
for
5.
a quorum.
4 to 5.
Okay, all righty. Commissioner Scholl?
Sir, a year and a half ago, when we talked about the Emergency Preparedness Councils, it was an ambitious plan that we had. We knew it wouldn't be easy. Since that time, have you seen progress in the 5 subject areas that those 5 councils represented?
For the 5 subcommittees, we've seen progress in communication and emergency preparedness, which are the 2 that are meeting. The other ones, we are making progress in disaster management, given some of the planning projects we have, but the council, the Emergency Preparedness Council subcommittees have not met and have not made progress in those
I'm
areas.
your liaison to the Community Preparedness Council. They, as you know, they've been very active.
Yes.
And I've enjoyed sitting in on their meetings. So at this time, considering our experiences with staffing and volunteers, I agree that it's time to reorganize to a more sustainable plan. So that would be reflected in your recommendation A, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I am too the liaison to the Communications Committee, and I hear from them at least once a week, believe it or not.
Good communicators.
Yeah, they communicate well, and that's my area of liaison is communications. So guess what? I get to hear everything going, oh my gosh, okay, right. So, and I'm big on communications and transparency, and I want to know the efforts are being made by DM to share on a regular basis with this EPC very pertinent information. They are very hungry for that. And I think that your department needs to start sharing more information because it is perceived that you're hanging on to stuff that can be shared that this group can use. And maybe that's part of the reason why people have dropped off. No, I have been told that's the reason why some of these people have quit, because they do not feel that they're a part of Clackamas County's disaster management team. And this is why this was set up. This is a very real problem, Daniel. Your team and yourself must reach out. You must put information out to this group, because this group is a bunch of doers. And we have practiced. I mean, I have my handheld radios. I'm part of the communication committee. I, have done everything. I made the mention I could live an entire month without electricity. Yes, I can. I'm not going to like it. I want to run my hair dryer and take a hot shower. Yes, but I can live just fine. So I think that more can be done at your end to enhance what they're doing. And maybe it's the secretary person. If you're doing something, for instance, with other municipalities, for instance, if you're notifying the cities, or if you're notifying this, it's a matter of a click on your email to send the same information out to every member on this EPC. And I would expect that needs to be done on a more regular basis.
Okay, we will send more frequent updates.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
So I'm looking at these subcommittees. So, what is the tangible outcome, colleagues, that we are expecting from this committee? For example, community preparedness, based on what we've been through, is this committee going to actually get a list based on their experiences of what community preparedness looks like in the fires? Like, I mean, where's the there? Is there something that they're going to do that will give us a tangible feedback with, what does that mean? I mean, basically, I saw a lot of people out there, they got clothing together, they got water together, they got food together. Is that part of what a community needs to do to be prepared for an emergency? So, communication, well, I don't have a two-way radio.
Why not?
Okay, because I didn't know I should have one, for one thing. And look at what just happened in Lahaina. The sirens didn't go off. So in communications, should we have those folks talk about, okay, just take them by, these seem to be more topics. Talk about, okay, what kind of a siren system do we have? What's the system when people get notified? When they hear a siren, specifically because there's a fire coming their way, which did not happen in Lahaina, which is why They're still trying to find people who are gone. So what does that mean for what we experience? So, I mean, I just want to say in logistics, what do you mean by logistics? I know what you mean in some ways, but does that mean talking about how the urban firefighters communicate with the forest firefighters? How do you move people in and out? Have we got a coordinated plan on how to move people from one area to another if there's a fire advancing? Stuff, maybe that's the stuff they should be talking. Something that gives us, okay, this is what we've experienced as community members because we experienced these disasters. And here's tactics that we need to use to be better prepared. So that's kind of what I'd like to see.
Well, I
don't know.
To your question, I believe you're 100% right, and I do believe that there have been recommendations from this EPC, but for some reason, they're not going up through the chain of command, so to speak, on this, because Daniel says they don't have a quorum to pass it. That's probably pretty poor. And if you want to know, I have a letter here that is 3 pages, single-spaced, of recommendations from a member, and they're very good. And they're very good, and you've probably seen it too. It says, Urgency Preparedness Council Goals for Tootie Smith. And I read through this, and a couple of them are not doable by us, okay, other jurisdictions. Some of them I think are already being done, but there are some good ideas on this. And you know what? All the items on this list are very thoughtful and do deserve consideration by a conversation at least. And Daniel, this is what I would expect to bring to us, I don't know, on maybe a half-year basis. I don't know. It's because we really are talking about people's lives here. And then there's this little chart that shows all of the apps you can get on your phone, which is really good. And then there's been one app that they're not using anymore and I forget which app that was. Let me read it here. I don't see it here. That the county is no longer broadcasting to its citizens. And so some of the people on the committee were made to believe, let me go through my notes again, Scanner Radio. Scanner Radio is no longer activated. And so a lot of these Emergency Preparedness Council folks were using Scanner Radio, and we've had some fires. We're not getting the information like we used to. So I don't know what's going on. I know our PGA puts stuff out on Facebook and the social medias, but I got to tell you, at least half of the people in Clackamas County aren't on social media. So we do have to find, and it's always been, communications has always been a problem. That's not on you. Communications has always been a problem. So Martha, when you talk about community preparedness, we have committee members who have gone out. They have taken on it themselves. They have taken a swath of geography. Right. And they have organized in their communities, you know, in their streets, and they have said, okay, we need to do this and this and this. And I think the communities that were most affected by this are the most organized. And I know you live in Lake Oswego, and probably Lake Oswego may not be as organized in this effort, I'm just guessing, because they weren't.
They're starting to be, because we have a very, I'm waiting for a conflagration there. I shouldn't say that, but it's a tree canopy that's bigger than their tree city. And it could very easily spark from a fireplace, you know, outdoor fireplace or a line or something. There could be some significant problems in that community. And, you know, again, how do we get out? Because
you know, something, you know, evacuation routes, Daniel, has always been something that people have complained about. In our last town hall meeting, you made a very good point. And I said, well, you know, we're not building any new roads in Clackamas County. You know where you live. You know where your road is. You're going to have to make a decision to go left, right, up, or down. And you said your notification for evacuations may be different than it was in September of 2020. You want to talk about that?
Sure, we do notifications system slightly differently now, where we've got a partnership between Clackamas Fire, CCSO, our PGA and public information staff and disaster management staff that do alerting. And we all get together to make sure, and the technology services, geographical information system, the GIS folks get together to make sure that we get the alerts out. The fire knows what alerts we want. CCSO approves them, disaster management sends it, and then the GIS folks get it up on the map, and we're all sitting mostly in the same room. Occasionally, there's one person virtually, but we're having that talk and getting that system out, and we're getting those alerts
So
out
for
faster.
instance, you're not going to evacuate 1/3 of the county all at the same time,
No,
like what happened last time, and therefore evacuation routes became clogged. So what you're going to take is the most at-risk areas, and you're going to do that, and then followed by this and followed by that,
grow it out
correct?
as needed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to make just a general comment. That is, my 25 years of public service and working with citizens and, attending committee meetings, whether I'm there as a liaison or a citizen or whatnot, sometimes, getting the attendance or the time of day or the meetings organized in a way that's attractive for everyone or convenient for everyone is hard.
It is.
But they don't always work well. And, I'll just take my dear friends that have been involved in libraries. That discussion went on for years and years and years and years before it really melded together. And it took a lot of work. But this is, for a year, just a little over a year of working together, it's still new. And sometimes they need to find their way and find those relationships. But if there's a possibility, again, both Commissioner Scholl and Chair Smith live in the rural areas. I think that's the area of highlighted concern. Obviously, it can happen anywhere. We always need to be prepared everywhere. But I would encourage, if you can attend these, to be part of that and just help them along and nurture that. I did that. I wasn't even assigned to libraries when I first got involved. I just did it on a volunteer basis. But I have found that, sometimes some guidance can go a long way and really encourage them. So I just want to put that out there. I wouldn't be necessarily critical, but of course they have to have a quorum to operate. And without a quorum, the staff's not really qualified to bring something to it.
No,
Because it has
that's
to be
the
from
issue.
group.
Yeah, that's the issue. And, you make a good point. This is infancy, but it is more emergency-oriented, and we live with that threat every single season, unlike, no offense, Commissioner Savas, a library board. So we're always kind of on edge that this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And right now, Commissioners, there are more wildfires or incidents that have been started and extinguished more than even we know about. And all of our boards and commissions are having trouble attracting people, not just this one. Yeah. Gary, what is the recommendation today?
Yes, so staff discussed these bylaw suggestions with the EPC at its last meeting, but they did not have a quorum to formally adopt it. They wanted your input, commissioners, if you're okay with the suggestions Daniel's recommending today. If you are, we're seeking your guidance that yes, you're okay with it. He'll go back to the EPC at their next meeting, where hopefully there'll be a quorum, and then they will approve their bylaw changes, and then it comes back to you one last time to formally approve the bylaw changes.
So there is a staff recommendation at the end of page 2. Do you want us to vote on that today?
Yes, please.
Commissioners?
Well, Chair, if you think it's appropriate as listed.
We have to do something. We have to do something. And, this group is just really near and dear to my heart, obviously. Commissioner West?
Do we do any, I'm just over here trying to be helpful. Do we do any promotion of our different boards and commissions at the fair? A captive Clackamas County audience? Do we ever do anything that helps kind of promote our different things for people to get engaged in?
I can speak to the Emergency Preparedness Council. We have, Disaster Management has a booth on Safety Street. I would say right now, but I know Safety Street had to close due to the high temperatures, and I'm pretty sure that my staff is trying to find any person that feels they would be interested with the experience and working on that.
Good.
Did you make a motion?
No, I was looking for your guidance, Chair.
Staff recommendation is please, or no, revise EPC bylaws to match member capacity. That's the staff recommendation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Shaw has moved to revise the EPC bylaws to match member capacity, and Commissioner Savas has seconded that motion. And then they're going to come back, correct? Okay, we'll revisit this. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. You're done.
Thank you. Next is Advisory Board and Commission appointments, which happens to be the Emergency Preparedness Council. Go ahead, Tony.
As you've heard, the Emergency Preparedness Council has 6 openings on their commission due to term expirations and resignations. Through a recruitment process, 1 application was received and is recommended for appointment. The recommendation is Melinda McCarthy to a first term.
Chair, I move that we approve Melinda
McCarthy.
McCarthy, thank you, to the first term to the Emergency Preparedness Council.
Seconded.
Commissioner West has moved we appoint Melinda McCarthy to the Emergency Preparedness Council, and Commissioner Shaw has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Next, review of your business meeting agenda for tomorrow, Thursday, August 17th, 2023, a 10 a.m. meeting. You will have a large consent agenda, which you reviewed today. You will have 3 public hearings. They are all boundary changes. 2 to Clackamas County Service District Number 1, which is Wes, and 2nd to the Sunrise Water Authority. You'll have 2 presentations, one on the County's Award of National Association of Counties Award, and recognizing several county employees who are receiving Spirit of Excellence Awards. That's our core value, Modeling Our Core Values Awards. So that's the agenda. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know before tomorrow, and I'm happy to answer it for
On
you.
the awards, will there be photos taken with
Yes,
the
there'll be a
board?
photo op for tomorrow.
Commissioners dressed for photos.
I'll try to grow my beard back faster.
All right.
Thank you. Next, short-term rentals, proposed ordinance review. County Counsel Stephen Madcor will help guide this discussion following up from your business meeting last Thursday. Welcome, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We had a fairly productive public hearing last Thursday night on short-term rentals and other items. And what we heard from your constituents were generally supportive, I think, of some type of regulations for short-term rentals. One of the areas of concern was signage. People didn't want their names and numbers on a placard outside their property while the unit was occupied. That's what the current proposed draft states and provides, and there are ways around that. The other things that they did not like, so there were some parking protests as well, primarily coming out of government camp. I think we can cure those. We have some proposed resolutions for that area. There were concerns about septic systems in some areas. I would say that's built in currently. We have emergency regulations within the proposed language saying if that there's a health and safety failure on the property, you could shut down a short-term rental, and that would, failing septic system would apply in that situation. You also heard about garbage, bear-proof garbage cans and things along those lines as well. If you wanted to impose those requirements, you certainly could. Mind you, we don't have those requirements anywhere else. So it would be specific to somebody renting out their house as a short-term rental would have to have bear-proof garbage cans. So those are the items that I heard, and Everett Wild was also at the hearing, and he and I have been, along with Caroline Hill, have been discussing what the public was stating and how to address those. We have some proposals. Happy to listen if the board has any input that they'd like to offer at this point as well. I'd be happy to hear it as well. You might have heard other things in addition too.
Thank you, Stephen. Commissioner West?
Mr. Madcor, thank you. Well, I also heard the concern about people's private information being posted in front of their property to contact if there was an issue with the home owners, like some security issues around that. I didn't know if you had any thoughts around that. And then if we wanted to do any tweaks where we could have better compliance, like, I don't think we need bear-proof cans in Oak Grove. But we probably do up at, but they may need them up at the mountain, right? Like, can we be nuanced and say within this area of the county that we do require, they have you're responsible, and if your garbage is found to be littered across the area and you're not doing your due diligence to prevent that, then you can be responsible for that. Is there any way to bring some, I guess a way to beef that up a little bit? I guess those are my two big things, is the garbage piece, and the people's personal information just like posted outside.
Okay. I'm sure commissioners will opine on this. Is somebody making a list?
I have a list.
We're tracking
Okay.
it.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Mr. Madcore, another thing we heard during the public hearing was the issue on the maximum number of people that can be at an STR at any one time. Now, in the county code, it restricts a single-family residence to a maximum of 15 occupants. Currently, our draft regulation for the STR has a maximum of 12 people at the STR at any one time, with a limitation of 2 people per bedroom plus 4. For example, if your STR has 3 bedrooms, it would be 3 times 2, 6 plus 4 is 10. So this issue, we heard about this from quite a few people. So I agree that we should look at modifying the current draft of the STR from a maximum of 12 people at an STR at any one time to 15 to correspond with the county code on residential occupancy.
Thank you. I believe that's going to be on the list,
Oh, good.
Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I do believe that we had a pretty productive hearing last week. I think it's responsible for us to entertain some of those revisions, and I support Commissioner Scholl's recommendation on that, just to make it consistent. The other one we heard a lot about, Commissioner West just raised this. I also agree about the personal information issue. That's how I received it. Most of it was about the personal information. So we did a debrief this morning with staff, and again, I want to thank Caroline and Everett for their work, and Mr. Madcore, yours as well, and Commissioner Scholl working together on this. It's been great. The recommendation I think we came up with, I believe, is to solely just post the emergency phone number to the basically a 24-hour number along with a permit number that they get assigned to for that. And it's that way, it's not personal information. It's a responsible thing to do. And even be mindful that if the sheriffs respond, that they got someone to call, perhaps, the owner, perhaps, besides the people that have rented the place for that evening. So it's not just the neighbors who might want to have an issue. So that would be a recommendation. And Mr. Madcore, the other one you said, the parking in the Timberline area, I think those are the 3 things I think that are viable. Everything else I think is either not so relevant, or maybe something we tackle 2 years after the pilot's run its course. But I would support that. I ask my colleagues to consider that and have staff to ready that for our September 7th meeting.
I have 2 questions on your recommendations. I'm not saying I disagree with them. What 24-hour emergency phone number, what phone number is that, the owner's phone number?
Well, it's whatever they provide. They're required to provide that, you know, in basically the affidavit. So
I
they would
know.
just be listing that number. So it could be the manager. But let's say they have a management company running
Like
it.
Airbnb?
It could be the management number, right?
Okay.
Or it could be some number that they provide. I don't know who that's going to be. If they don't want to have their personal information, they can have a separate phone, for example. If they don't want to give their personal phone out.
I just want your point of clarification. And what were you talking about parking on
In the Timberline area, if Mr. Madcore could elaborate
what's
on
that
that.
about?
Well, you heard some constituents say that the parking requirements that are currently proposed per bedroom might not be doable up in Government Camp because the parking's lots are smaller up there, the driveways are small, they're covered with snow and things like that. And so we would relieve those parking requirements for areas of Government Camp, and it's also some parts of Welch's as well. I can't recall the exact zone, but there's a particular zone, rural tourists or something along those lines. I ran this by Jennifer Hughes and the planning folks, and they're in support of it as well.
Okay. I support that too, because I remember them saying when it's 10 feet of snow, you don't park anywhere. And they're right, and I've been up there snowshoeing around Timberline Rim area and Government Camp. And tourists can't even hardly find a place to park, and so they're very right on that. Commissioner West.
Can we address the issue around not being, like the personal responsibility to make sure your garbage is secure and out? Is there any way that we can bring some local control over that?
Yeah, what we learned is that we don't have the ordinance in place on our waste collection stuff with our providers. We would have to do some changes that are outside of this altogether. So
Okay.
I think we can glean from this and maybe discuss that, and in 2 years from now, make that change, incorporate that change into it. I just want to go quickly back to the parking issue. I'm very familiar with Timberline, those issues out there, but I'm not so familiar with Mr. McCord. You mentioned Welch's, so I don't have a comfort zone there yet, so maybe I need to drive out there again, but the parts of Welch's that I think has a valid reason for the parking protocols that we discussed are important. So there's areas that are exceptions to that. I'd like to know, have a better understanding what that zoning and what that area looks like. I'll drive up there if I have to look at that.
Let me inquire further and get back to you on that one, okay?
But I do support the Timberline piece.
Government Camp.
Government
Camp, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Government Camp, that whole ridge up there. Anything else, commissioners? So, Stephen Madcourt, there's 3 proposed changes. Number 1, posting a 24-hour emergency phone number, taking the occupancy, leaving it at 15, and no parking. Are those changes easy to do by the time we meet on September 7th in a hearing to approve this?
Yes, Chair, absolutely, easily done.
Okay. And Commissioners, was I right in expressing what this is?
I have one quick question.
Okay, just a moment. But Commissioners, was I correct on that? Okay. Yeah, Commissioner West.
Thank you. Well, on the phone number that they have to call, one of the real concerns is you call a management company, nobody ever calls you back. So like, can we put a parameter? You need to be like, it somehow needs to like get to somebody. You have a reasonable time to return that phone call. You need to be available. Like it's just not going into some phone tree ether where the neighbors just get more and more upset because they're not getting the resolution they need, is my one concern about the quality of the number in which they provide to, not just any number.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, I'd like to answer that. The regulation that we've drafted requires the STR owner to post a number to somebody who can respond to a complaint on that STR within 2 hours. Now, if they fail to do that, and if it happens enough, that STR owner is subject to a fine. If the fines go unattended long enough, that STR may be subject to having its registration revoked. So that it's very critical that whatever number is posted, that somebody's going to answer the phone and respond to any kind of problem within 2 hours.
Okay, further questions? You okay?
Good.
Okay, I will accept a motion that we approved the short-term rental recommendations with these 3 changes: 24-hour emergency phone number, leaving the occupancy rate at 15, and the no parking recommendation.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved that we approve the STR proposal with the 3 recommendations that I just mentioned the three edits I just mentioned, and Commissioner Savas to second the motion. Further discussion. Are we okay, Commissioners?
We're okay.
Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Stephen, before you leave, I do want to speak to this. Commissioners, I have an idea that I want you to think about. This is a 2-year pilot program. I don't think I've even asked Gary about this. I don't remember. I'm going to offer this up as an idea. I think we should establish a short-term rental association that is organized by the tourism department, that we convene people in the areas that we have these short-term rentals, that all geographic areas are represented and all types of businesses are represented, that they are our eyes and our ears as we move forward, and they can report back to us, maybe on a yearly basis. It's up to us, you know, what that would look like. At the end of the 2-year pilot, they can compile their information and bring it back to us and help us move forward on this. It's very hard, I'm speaking to the public out there, it's very hard when this board gets together and we have one side that is so adamant that we must take away short-term rentals, or we have one side that is so adamant, don't regulate us at all. And even in conservative Idaho, they have a registration for short-term rentals. And this is very bland in going forward with that. And I do think the Tourism Council should be in charge of this, because after all, the Tourism Council is the one that's reaping the financial benefits from this. And I believe the Tourism Council needs to be able to listen to the people out there who are living this. So I want commissioners to think about this. It doesn't have to be done now. We can wait till January to do it. But I think that would be very good for us, for them to bring us very logical, quantifiable data is what we desire as we go forward with this. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I just want to say that's an interesting idea. I would certainly, I could see, first thing I could see, make sure that it's balanced. So you have, STR operators, you also have neighbors, you also have some few different groups, so to speak, that are represented, that got some balance. So yeah, I'll definitely toss that around and maybe, maybe get some feedback between now and then about the TDC or where it could be housed. If it's not TDC, where else could it be, or so forth. So, but yeah, I see some value in that.
And the TDC would be perfect for this. I just think that would do them a lot of good on the education level. Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Chair Smith. I like it because we need extra eyes on the STR situation between now and 2 years from now when we make our assessment on the result of this 2-year pilot program. So I think this would be, and you're talking about a council at the county level,
Well, it's
not at the state level.
Correct, county level.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like, similar to one of our ABCs.
Got it. Okay, good.
Commissioner Schrader?
So do you want to really do a whole nother group, or do you want to talk to the tourism development folks and see if they can have people who run SDRs as part of their tourism
Well,
group?
it's just not enough to have the people who run the STRs. We need people, for instance, who live there.
Okay.
And we've heard a lot of people who live there, correct? We have people who live there that say it's wonderful. We have people who live there say it's a nightmare. So we need a balance of all of that, like Commissioner Savas was saying. It's not just enough to have the owners. And I would submit we could have the larger owners, but maybe not. It's really targeted to short-term rentals. I would like that to be. But you know what? It's up to us when we start kicking it around. Sure.
I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, okay. So we'll just write that down and take a look at. So if this passes on September 7th, when would this be implicated?
Typically 90 days afterwards, or you could declare an emergency and make it effective immediately. It's up to the board's discretion.
Commissioners, have you considered either one of those options? Commissioner Shaw?
Mr. Madco, 90 days would put us right close to 1 January, and I think that sounds good to me.
Commissioner Savas?
I think 90 days is pretty adequate. I think probably the biggest lengthy challenge will be is getting someone staffed up for that and bringing someone on. So it'll be putting that infrastructure in place, which will probably take a little bit longer than 3 months. So that's why the time doesn't bother me a lot, is I think we just need to get this approved and then get that position. And, you know, the TDC has offered the resources to hire that position. So we just need to put that whole mechanism in place, the machinery in place.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Thank you, Stephen Madcore.
Thank you.
Gary, what's next?
Final item today is Commissioner Communications.
Ooh. Gee, who wants to go first?
Chair
Ben.
Smith,
Oh, Shaw, you're up.
I'll be happy. There's something I wanted to mention to the board. A few weeks ago, Commissioner West and I had the privilege of visiting the Salvation Army facility located just south of the airport.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's a beautiful facility that was used as a addiction recovery center until funding ran out. But it is set up, I mean, it's beautiful. It could house up to 90 people. And it's got everything you can imagine that is almost looks like a miniature hospital to me. I wanted to bring that to your attention. When we look at our upcoming committee to look at addiction recovery, I would like to send you an email we received from the Salvation Army people that shows some slides of their facility, just so you have it in mind, because there might be a way we can partner with these people, because they already have the facility. All we need to do is help them get set up. And also, they have years of experience in addiction recovery right there. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner West?
I'll piggyback on that. Not only did we see this facility from Salvation Army, but the city of Portland partnered with them on a brand-new effort for safe parking that was quite brilliant, actually. And I was like, well, how can, this seems super replicatable that we could do something similar here as we deal with situations like over on Clackamas Street behind the DEQ that are concerning, or other places where we have zombie RVs popping up. So Salvation Army has some good history and expertise in doing this. I got the impression that when Commissioner Schull and I were there, that they were really excited about the opportunity to partner with us, and they seem to very much understand what a recovery system is all about and how to make that work and not totally have to reinvent the wheel. I am concerned that it may be behind the scenes, I need to get more education on this and take a little bit closer look, and I'll take the time to do that. But how our RFP process works to make sure that we're throwing the biggest net possible to get the best responses we possibly can, to help partner with programmers and people that have this expertise to do the work around recovery in Clackamas County when we invest in these types of efforts. So it was a hot afternoon, but it was great. But they really did some stuff that I think is really replicatable. They also didn't. They still provide sober living now, but they don't have the funding anymore to do a full, robust, full continuum of care piece. But they had some of their own internal funding, and it changed a lot when they no longer do the thrift stores to help fund in some of the market change in COVID. But they do have some fundraising capabilities to provide some basic sober living for people that need long-term stability to get out of the situation they're in. And they have a really good track record of actually people getting back on their feet again and being made whole. So that was a lot of really, that was a very interesting day. I've actually drove out there a couple times just to kind of see okay, now that we're not there, how's it going? Because it's so new, like what's the situation like? What's the vibe around the area like? So I've been very impressed with the potential for what they're doing there. So yeah, I will echo what you've said, Joel. It was a great visit. And they actually, I'll add this, have invited one of us or both of us to go to Longview, where they built another facility out with pod housing, very similar to the Veterans Village, and they actually had prototypes of these pods. I mentioned it earlier today, but they did a great job partnering with the city of Longview and a lot of the Not in My Backyard people, and a lot of the angst they had in that community was actually quite robust, and they were able to navigate through a lot of that struggle that governments have with businesses and neighbors to figure out how to get all these stakeholders to get some buy-in. And now that program is off the ground in Longview, and by all reports is doing quite well. So it'd be interesting to take a little drive up to Longview, Washington, and to maybe speak with some of the city officials there, how they overcame some of that more NIMBY pieces, what were their barriers. So if we can mitigate those going forward, that might be a worthwhile afternoon also. But a lot of great information from the Salvation Army.
I find that interesting. Salvation Army has a really good reputation. And I think they're able to take a message where government can't.
Yep.
And so when you say that they were able to reach out to the NIMBY and calm the concerns of citizens, that may be a piece that we're missing here at Clackamas County. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
I'm just going to mention the fair. It was pretty nostalgic for me yesterday as we kind of walked the parade route, where I was pointing out where our first library was and where the second library was and where the third library was in that iteration of years when I lived there, when I knew we had to expand our library. And of course now Canby has a brand new library. But another experience I had was I had a young woman after the opening event come up to me and introduce herself. And it turns out that she went to high school with my son Steve. And she basically remembers when Mr. Bangs, their government teacher, took them down to Salem. And Steve got to sit on the floor with his dad, Kurt Schrader, and some other kids did as well. And she said that experience influenced her to get very active in the community and to become an advocate. And that's amazing. This happens sometimes when you're not sure what impact you're having, but when you see a story like that, and she now is an advocate for early preschool education and early childhood education. She has a son that needs an IEP in the school district. But she said that experience is what really inspired her. So I was kind of happy to hear that, and so it was nice to be in the community again. It was a little hot, I thought, but we all survived the heat. Another thing I want to mention is tomorrow I also will be meeting with Bridget Daisy, who is our Executive Director of Clackamas Workforce Partnership. Again, we'll be discussing early learning, childcare. Again, how do we help get people back to work? We continue to hear from our businesses, and Laura Edmonds will echo this with me, that a lack of childcare is a barrier to most people, a lot of people getting back to work. In fact, my daughter asked me to fly out again, but I don't know if I can or not because their childcare facility flooded. And it's going to be closed down for a while. So we'll see. I think I need to be here, but she'll help. We'll get something figured out with that. And that's pretty much the news that I have. And also with Bridget, we're going to be talking about what we talked about today, how to get people back into the workforce, how to connect them, people that are struggling, are trying to get through recovery, what are some of the things that they're doing right now, because I believe they are doing those efforts with people in recovery right now, but also how does it fit into what we're doing as we look at various systems to move people into recovery and, again, out of addiction experiences. So, okay, that's all I have.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, one thing I might suggest, I think about 7 or 8, maybe 9 years ago, I first reached out to Salvation Army and toured their facility in Washington County. So you need to do that. I would suggest you do that. And now that I think about it, it was prior to the Veterans Village, because I was trying to figure out how we tackle that first. I was listening to Eugene, what they did in Eugene model, what they're doing here. And I was hoping that they would branch out into Clackamas County many, many, many years ago. So I think they're really a viable organization. It really is part of their mission, is really what they do. So I think you'll be fascinated if you go out there and just look at that, because it is more of the recovery model, Ben, I think that you've been kind of talking about. So I think that'd be of value. At the same time, around that same era, when I was just looking at models, I just thought at the November conference we had at AOC, I forgot to actually take you out into some of the areas of the models. So they have a car camping facility out over there by one of the shelters, and it's just a place where people can go park and car camp. And so I think they have a few different names for it, but it's a model very similar to what the Salvation Army is doing out there. And it's kind of very easy to adapt, actually, here. I would encourage you to look what's going on there, as well as their mental health drug facility. Martha, you and I went there with Commissioner Farr. There's a name for it. We nicknamed it the wet facility. Yeah. But that's another model to go look at in the Eugene area. And lastly, Commissioner West, you and I have talked about some camping regulations. That camping in a car. I appreciate Chair Smith and I had an hour couple Fridays ago to go out and just look at a couple issues. We didn't get into the neighborhoods to see some of the, whether it's the neighborhoods along 82nd Avenue or McLaughlin or Gladstone or wherever. But, I think folding that into that camping regulation piece is something that if I think we're interested in, really appreciate maybe having our staff, or helping understand that our staff are interested in looking at some kind of camping regulations. And I think the car camping piece, it might be part of the solution, but you can't have camping regulations without shelters. So we need to get the shelters. So I'm sorry I missed at lunch that discussion you all had about that aspect, and I'll watch the video to figure out what you all discussed. But I think the sooner we get moving on something, the better off we are.
I don't mind discussions on any of this. I think we need to wait for our CARS committee, right? Clackamas Addiction and Recovery Summit. Going forward with that, we have really good ideas about, where to put camping. The school that we looked at, I think, is just really right for that. I think that might be a good project going forward, too. Discussions are good, so we'll figure out when to have that discussion. We heard from PGA. Clackamas County is a recipient of an Oregon Culvert award of $1.49 million on Conway Creek, flows under Ashcroft Road in Rhododendron, to provide access to a minimum of 0.76 miles of upstream spawning and rearing habitat for wild coho salmon and wild steelhead, among other aquatic organisms. So we got a culvert award. It's a national culvert program. And I was hoping we'd get something for a bridge, but I guess we get a culvert instead. Can't say no to money, right? Yes, we all attended the fair yesterday. It was very hot. And I think we were in the parade, and we performed opening ceremonies. It was very good. Our new multi-purpose facility / livestock barn was very well received, and the information is getting out there. They do have a rendering, a drawing of what it's going to look like. They have not picked the colors yet. I asked that specifically. They are not going to do red because they want it to be more soothing and to blend in a little bit more. That was good. The attendance along the fair route was probably as low as I've ever seen it, and I believe it was because it was so hot.
It was 1,000,000 degrees.
It was 1,000,000 degrees, and we were overheating on the inside. You could just tell. And sitting on the stage was very hot, too. But all of us commissioners had a great time. I think a lot of people had attended that particular fair date earlier than they normally do, which is also very good. Seeing no further business before this commission, we are adjourned. Excuse me.